Chapter 1914. The place where Qian Qinghua went missing was Linyu Town, which had nothing to do with Shihuang Town. However, both towns could be reached through Yangyuan City's teleportation formation, so it was possible that the Imperial Thunder Sect had spies in Shihuang Town. Thinking of Qian Qinghua, Xiao Hua naturally thought of everything that Qian Qinghua did to him. Xiao Hua, who had seen the cruelty of the Morning Rain Continent's cultivation world, didn't have too many complaints about Qian Qinghua. Now that he thought about it, Qian Qinghua treated him quite well. That clear flower pill that could take his life was refined by Xiao Hua when he was around the 16th level of qi refining. Of course, the medicinal effect was insignificant compared to the fire essence flame crystal. Then, Xiao Hua thought of Lu Yang's Cai family, Fairy Hongxia and Cai Zhuoxia. Maybe I should go and pay my respects to Cai Zhuoxia. Xiao Hua's heart was a little sad. When he first entered the cultivation world of the Dawn Rain continent, Cai Zhuoxia was the first companion he traveled with. He really benefited a lot from her, but Cai Zhuoxia died young. Fate really made fools of people. If Xiao Hua was alone, he would have already gone after Xiong Yang left with Yang Qinglian and Xiong Zhili. But now he had Xue by his side. As a female cultivator, how could Xue not have any thoughts about him and Fairy Hongxia? If he didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble, then it was better not to mention it. Therefore, Xiao Hua smiled and said to Xue, "Wife, your husband is still not familiar with the Morning Rain continent. Now that senior brother and senior sister have returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect, I will listen to your instructions on how to get to Kahe. Xue covered her mouth. She enjoyed being called wife very much. She smiled and said, "From Shihuang Town to Kahe, I'm afraid you'll have to accompany me all the way to the east. First, we'll have to reach the border between Xi and Meng. Then, we'll have to cross the entire Meng before we reach Kahe. In the country of Xi, there are many teleportation formations that can be used. Using the Shihuang Town's teleportation formation, we can return to Yangyuan City. From there, we can go to Chiyue City, Qianyu City, Haoming City, Jingpa City, Zuntian City, and Tongmu City. But if we go east to Meng Kingdom, we can only go to Haoming City. After we reach Haoming City, we can only teleport to a few small towns in the east. We will need to fly there. Between the country of Xi and Meng Kingdom, there is a Mojiao Black Forest. That is one of the 10 most dangerous places in the Xiaoyu continent. Only by going through the Mojiao Black Forest can we reach Meng Kingdom." "Ah! It's so far." Xiao Hua was stunned and said, "Last time when I followed Martial Uncle Zhen Qing to Meng Country's Taiqing sect, it didn't seem to be this troublesome." "Okay, I'll let you know." Xue covered her mouth and giggled. The Taiqing sect is located in the south of Meng Kingdom, not too far from Xi Kingdom. It is also at the edge of the Mojiao Black Forest. Besides, my husband is riding the Thunderboat, a flying artifact of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Of course, it is much faster and more convenient. But if we walk the same old path, how can it be of any use to gain experience? But the Mojiao Black Forest is very dangerous. It is said that only Foundation Establishment and Gold Core cultivators can enter it. Xiao Hua frowned and said, with my husband, what is there to be afraid of?" Without Xiong Yang and the others by her side, Xue was not shy at all. She kept calling Xiao Hua her husband, as if Xiao Hua was really her dual cultivation partner. If I am alone, I can go to the Mojiao Black Forest. But if I am with my wife, I have to think about it. Xiao Hua did not hide his love and care, holding Xue's hand and said. Xue nodded and said happily, "We can go to the edge of the Mojiao Black Forest. There is no need to go deep. I will listen to my wife's orders." Xiao Hua echoed, and then the two stepped into the transmission array. However, the moment he stepped into the transmission array, Xiao Hua hesitated. He thought that as long as he succeeded in his cultivation, he would immediately rescue Xiao Shenrue from the abyss of suffering and avenge Xiao Hongyu. Although Xiao Hua was only at the Foundation Establishment stage, his strength had surpassed the late Foundation Establishment stage and could even be compared to the early Gold Core stage. However, after careful consideration, Xiao Hua felt that his cultivation was still a little lacking, especially when he remembered the collective attack of the sect disciples in the dark knowledge. Xiao Hua knew that with Xiao Yuehong's cultivation in the middle foundation establishment stage, there was no chance for him to escape. He was afraid that with his cultivation in the late foundation establishment stage, he would not be able to deal with the entire 100 Herbs sect. Let's wait a little longer. To deal with the entire 100 Herbs sect, I'm afraid I will need to be at the middle gold core stage. Wait until this young master reaches the middle foundation establishment stage, then I will go look for the 100 Herbs sect. Xiao Hua's footsteps paused for a moment, and then he stepped into the transmission array. Just as Xiao Hua stepped into the transmission array, the somewhat familiar-looking middle foundation establishment stage cultivator he had met before had arrived at a mountain range in the flame forest swamp. His vicious gaze swept over the blazing fire lake, and he said coldly, "Xiao Hua, this old man has finally found you. That bitch Cai Zhuoxia is already dead. This old man can't turn into a malicious spirit and seek revenge on her. Then watch this old man tear you to pieces, search your soul, and shatter your bones, so that you will never be reincarnated." Senior brother Yang Yu Tilda, the middle foundation establishment stage cultivator next to him, frowned and said, "Although this Xiao Hua is a qi condensation stage cultivator, but he is also a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Now he is with Zhan Yi, and there are two middle foundation establishment stage senior brothers. I'm afraid it would be inconvenient for us to act, right?" This cultivator was actually Yang Yu of the Xuanyan school, and was precisely Yang Wei's blood relative. Ph tilde junior brother Liang Yu tilde Yang Yu sneered and said, "This Yang only has Wei as his blood relative great-grandson. Since he was young, who knows how much effort I put into him. Originally, I wanted to wait until he reached the 10th layer of qi condensation before looking for an opportunity to take him into my Xuanyan school. But who would have thought that he would actually be killed by that bastard Xiao Hua and that bitch Cai Zhuoxia? When this Yang heard the news of Wei Yi's death, it took me a great deal of effort to learn of Cai Zhuoxia's name from the Yang family disciples. Then, I racked my brains to learn of Xiao Hua's name from Lu Yang's Cai family, and I even happened to learn from junior brother Shi that Xiao Hua had actually entered the Imperial Thunder sect. This Yang originally thought that I wouldn't be able to personally avenge this deep-seated hatred, but who would have thought that I would receive a message from senior brother Chen? This really is the will of the heavens. That day, this Yang merely casually mentioned it after drinking. Who would have thought that senior brother Chen would remember it, and we just happened to meet within this flame forest marsh. If this Yang doesn't seize this opportunity, in the future, when Xiao Hua reaches foundation establishment and his cultivation catches up to this Yang's, how will this Yang still have a chance? Senior brother Yang, it's not that Liang Yu isn't willing to accompany senior brother in taking revenge, but there's a Jindan cultivator. Liang Yu explained with a wry smile. Don't worry, junior brother Liang Yu. How can this Yang let junior brother offend a Jindan cultivator? Yang Yu chuckled and said, even if this Yang gave junior brother 10 more medicinal pills, this Yang still wouldn't let you take such a great risk. This Yang only wants to find a suitable opportunity to act after the Jindan cultivator leaves. Since senior brother Yang hasn't let hatred get to your head, Liang Yu can be at ease. Liang Yu nodded at first, but then frowned and said, the message talisman has already been sent out for so long, why haven't I seen senior brother Chen's reply yet? Yang Yu sighed and said, this Yang went out to gather medicinal herbs and just came back. I only just found out that senior brother Chen sent a message talisman last year and immediately invited junior brother over. I'm afraid senior brother has already left. Right at this moment, two familiar divine consciousnesses swept over from afar. Yang Yu laughed loudly and said, it's senior brother Chen, you've arrived. Indeed, not far away, Chen Han and Jie Ming flew over, looking exhausted. The moment they saw Yang Yu, they said unhappily, junior brother Yang, why did you only arrive today? Yang Yu immediately smiled apologetically and said, no, this Yang didn't come because this Yang went out to gather medicinal herbs. I just came back. Oh, I see. Jie Ming nodded. Junior brother Yang is a famous alchemist in our Xuanyan cult. He's very tired, so it's normal for him to go out to gather medicinal herb. Ha ha, Yang Yu laughed and clapped his hands, taking out a bottle of medicinal pills and handing it over. Senior brother Qian, this is a small token of my appreciation, please don't dislike it. Unfortunately, Qian Han didn't reach out his hand. Instead, he glanced at Jie Ming and said with a bitter smile, this Qian wanted to take this spirit pill, unfortunately. What? Yang Yu was shocked, his expression changing. That bastard Xiao Hua has already left Flame Forest Marsh? Could it be that he hasn't? Qian Han hesitated and said, even if he has left, he can't leave. Very good. Yang Yu was overjoyed. Then what about Zhen Yi? Did he leave long ago? Zhen Yi. I'm afraid he can't leave either, Qian Han said with a bitter smile. Ayo, that's not good. Yang Yu frowned and handed the medicinal pills to Qian Han. No matter what, since senior brother told this Yang about that bastard's whereabouts, this medicinal pill should belong to senior brother. Seeing that Yang Yu was in the middle of the situation and didn't understand, Liang Yu reminded him from outside. Senior brother Yang, senior brother Qian means that Xiao Hua has already died, right? Ah! Yang Yu was stunned at first, then he looked up to the sky and laughed. Heaven follows man's wishes, heaven follows man's wishes, ha ha ha, I just don't know if senior brother Qian saw how that bastard died with his own eyes. Psi tilde senior brother Qian, junior brother Yang is not an outsider. You should explain things clearly, don't talk in riddles. Jie Ming sighed and said to Qian Han. Fine tilde, let's find a quiet place. Qian Han nodded. After Qian Han finished speaking, Yang Yu finally understood. It turned out that Qian Han and Jie Ming didn't catch up to Jiang Zhucheng and the others. At first, they didn't dare to send a message for fear of disturbing the Thunder Beast or disturbing Jiang Zhucheng. It wasn't until 10 days later that they sent out a summoning talisman. However, at that time, Jiang Zhucheng's corpse was covered by the Thunder Beast's blood-red seal. The summoning talisman flew in the air for a while but couldn't find a trace. After flying back and forth, it returned to Qian Han's hands. This caused Qian Han and Jie Ming to be bewildered. After all, if Jiang Zhucheng had died, the summoning talisman shouldn't have been able to fly away. Since it could fly away, it meant that he hadn't died. Since it couldn't find the direction, it must have been disturbed by a restriction. Thus, Qian Han and Jie Ming searched all over the Flame Forest Mountains. However, they didn't know how many summoning talismans they had sent out in the past year, but they were all in the same situation. It wasn't until a few days ago when Xiao Hua broke the Thunder Beast's blood-red seal that Qian Han's summoning talisman stopped flying. Naturally, Qian Han already knew that Jiang Zhucheng had died. Presumably, Zhen Yi and the others had also lost their lives. As for Xiao Hua, he had long disappeared when the Five Elements soul-capturing formation collapsed. Qian Han didn't think that an aura-refining cultivator could survive when the formation collapsed. Hearing that even a golden core cultivator like Jiang Zhucheng had died, Yang Yu was relieved. However, he still felt somewhat uneasy. So you're saying that senior brother Qian didn't personally see that bastard Xiao Hua die? -8. Chapter 1915. Qian Han said discontentedly, Xiao Hua, Li Fengzhu, Qing Hao, Zhu Ming, and Li Mian all disappeared at the same time. I have Li Fengzhu's summoning talisman. When I first got separated from Master, I sent him a summoning talisman. At that time, Li Fengzhu had already died. Yes, tilde Yang Yu smiled apologetically and handed the pill over. Since senior brother has passed the information about that fellow to me, how can I go back on my word? Senior brother, please take it. All right. Qian Han nodded and kept the pill. It's a pity that I can't let junior brother Yang take revenge with his own hand. As long as that bastard dies, it's better than anything else. Yang Yu said hatefully, it's a pity that I haven't seen that bastard even after Xiao Hua died. That day, the disciples of the Yang clan only paid attention to Cai Zhuoxia, and the people of the Cai clan had never seen Xiao Hua. Even now, I don't know what that guy looks like tilde HMPH. What's so good about an aura-refining disciple? Qian Han sneered and described Xiao Hua's appearance. But just as Qian Han finished speaking, Yang Yu said in astonishment, what? Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua looks like this. He's an aura-refining disciple, not a foundation-building disciple. Of course. Qian Han frowned. How could this Chen make a mistake? Yang Yu glanced at Liang Yu. Liang Yu similarly came to a realization and said anxiously, "Then, the other disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect?" "Other disciples?" Jie Ming was also stunned. He said curiously, "Aside from Zhen Yi, there's a man and a woman who seem to be dual cultivation partners. They're both middle-stage foundation building disciples. There's also a female aura refining disciple like Xiao Hua. Her attitude towards Xiao Hua was also very intimate." "Ah," Yang Yu said anxiously, "is there one?" "No. That baby is less than a month old." "What?" Qian Han was also greatly shocked. She practically moved in front of Yang Yu and said, You all have seen Xiao Hua? When did he see her? What do those 3 Imperial Thunder Sect disciples look like?" Naturally, it was when this Yang had just arrived at Shihuang Town. Yang Yu told him about his encounter with Xiao Hua. "No, the 2 female cultivators look the same as Xiao Hua. That Xiong is obviously different." Qian Han shook her head. "Senior brother," Jie Mingze exclaimed in surprise, "did you forget about the Thunder Beast's inner core?" Although Xiao Hua didn't say what he wanted the Thunder Beast's core for, Xiao Hua isn't of the lightning attribute. His senior brothers all have the lightning attribute, so the Thunder Beast's core. More than that, Liang Yu smiled and said, "Xiao Hua has 4 storage bags." Chase. How could Qian Han and Jie Ming not know what had happened? They shouted in unison without hesitation. Since the Imperial Thunder Sect had disciples on duty at Shihuang Town's transmission array, there was no need to talk about Shuanyan School. Although Qian Han and the others were Foundation Establishment disciples and didn't have too much authority, wasn't Yang Yu an alchemist? After sending out a summoning talisman and giving them some medicinal pills, Yang Yu obtained some information. He found out that Xiong and the others were escorting 4 middle-stage Foundation Establishment disciples back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. This time, Yang Yu was extra careful and inquired about the appearances of the 6 disciples returning to the Imperial Thunder Sect. When he found out that Xiao Hua didn't return to the Imperial Thunder Sect, he couldn't help but be ecstatic. However, when he asked about Xiao Hua's whereabouts, the disciple on duty at Shuanyan School couldn't say anything. After all, Xiao Hua was an early-stage Foundation Establishment disciple and Xue was an aura refining disciple, so it was unlikely that they would attract the attention of the disciple on duty. Later, after Yang Yu took out some rare medicinal pills, the disciple on duty returned half a day later and received some vague information. Xiao Hua was probably heading in the direction of Haoming City. As for whether he was heading to Haoming City or not, there were so many transmission array towns in between and there were also direct flights, so who could know? After the disciple on duty at Shuanyan School left, Yang Yu looked at Qian Han and the others and said with a smile, "Senior martial brothers, I have a blood feud with Xiao Hua, so I must make a trip to Haoming City. If you 3 want to return to Golden Goose Mountain Range, I'm afraid we can't go together." Qian Han glanced at Jie Ming, and the 2 of them quickly exchanged glances. Just now, Yang Yu had carefully observed the movements of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples, so the 2 of them naturally knew that Xiong and Yang Qinglian didn't have the 4 storage pouches on their waists. All 4 storage pouches were on Xiao Hua. Qian Han and Jie Ming probably knew more about the contents of the 4 storage pouches than Yang Yu and Liang Yu. Since the storage pouches were on the body of an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, how could they not covet them? Qian Han coughed twice and said with a smile, "My master died in the Flame Forest mountain range. Xiao Hua, a lowly person, actually took my master's storage pouch. As his disciple, how could I not ask him for it? This trip to Haoming City, I can't not take it. Haha, that's great." Yang Yu's divine sense swept the surroundings for a moment, and he said in a low voice, "Since that's the case, the 4 of us should still travel together and kill that bastard Xiao Hua. The things on his body, how about the 4 of us divide them equally? We'll do as junior martial brother Yang says." The 3 of them all had the same idea. Since they were fellow disciples of the same sect, they didn't have to worry about anything and hit it off. Of course, there were many routes to Haoming City, and they couldn't be sure which route Xiao Hua took, so they could only search for him along the way. As for Xiao Hua, he simply didn't know that Yang Wei, whom he killed more than 10 years ago, actually only caused trouble today. He even took Shwe to leisurely pass through a small town's teleportation array, and they flew hand in midair. Shwe, do you think the great Tao of this world is heartless? Or is it sentimental? Xiao Hua looked at the changing scenery under his feet, which was either blooming flowers or overlapping mountain ranges, and couldn't help but ask. Shwe was obviously stunned, but then she pursed her lips and said with a smile, "The heavenly Tao is heartless and regards all things as straw dogs. This is common knowledge in cultivation, why do you ask?" Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Look at eldest senior martial brother. He was loyal and considerate all his life, but because of my master in the 10,000 Thunder Valley, his Tao foundation was damaged, and he couldn't build his foundation for 60 years, suffering the ridicule of others. After building his foundation, his lifespan was shortened, and he couldn't advance for a long time. If it was someone else, I'm afraid they would have long given up, or even cursed the heavens for being unfair, but eldest senior martial brother still cultivated diligently and faced people with a smile. Now, on this trip to the Flame Forest Mountains, not only was his Tao foundation repaired, even Xiongzhili was born. What eldest senior martial brother said for many years. I'm afraid his self-deprecating words will come true. Tell me, isn't this a gift from the heavenly Tao? What husband said is somewhat partial. Shwe shook her head slightly. There are many unjust things in this world, and eldest senior martial brother is just one of them. He could achieve perfection. To be honest, it's all thanks to husband. If it wasn't for husband's help, he could only end up dying of old age in the blood-colored seal. As for senior martial sister and Xiongzhili, they're also ordinary. How could there be a distracted Xiongzhili? What about the others besides eldest senior martial brother? From what husband knows, how many people have achieved perfection? That's right, the heavenly Tao is unpredictable, and not something we can predict. Husband still hopes that fairness under the heavenly Tao can become justice. Xiao Hua sighed. At this moment, Xiao Hua's expression suddenly changed again, and he used his hand to pull Shwe. -8. Chapter 1916. Xiao Hua suddenly sensed some changes in the starry sky of heavenly Tao in the space. He hurriedly pulled Shwe's hand and said anxiously, "Wife, your husband has gained some insights. Go into seclusion with me for a few days." How could Shwe not be happy to see Xiao Hua's cultivation progress again? Xiao Hua landed in midair and found a clean cave. After setting up the rabbit array, the two of them cultivated in seclusion in the cave. Xiao Hua sat cross-legged, his mind entering the space. He saw the young thunder beast curled up with its legs curled up, sparkling blue lightning hovering above it. It was sleeping soundly. Goldie also used its big tail to cover itself, its small eyebrows slightly furrowed. It was also sleeping soundly. Only little Silver was on top of the extremely exuberant spirit grass, sometimes nibbling and sometimes playing. It was very leisurely and carefree. Little Silver seemed to sense Xiao Hua's mind. Its little tail curled around the stem of a spirit grass, and its two little front paws cupped together. Its two bright little eyes looked around as if it was looking for Xiao Hua. Hee. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over everything in the space, and his mind immediately soared high into the sky. The original engravings of the starry sky of heavenly Tao, which had been brought in by the origin of fire, became even clearer. At that moment, because of some of Xiao Hua's insights, there were some changes. Xiao Hua's mind welcomed the trajectory of the starry sky, and he let it go limitlessly as he carefully sensed the changes in it. Xiao Hua sat there for 100 days. There were no fluctuations in the spirit chi of heaven and earth on his body, nor was there any flow of magic power like when he usually cultivated. Shwe was very surprised and couldn't help frowning. What kind of cultivation is this? But just as Shwe was feeling a little anxious, she saw that Xiao Hua, who was sitting upright, had a change. Xiao Hua actually started to fade away, as if he was about to fade into the surroundings. But just as Xiao Hua was about to disappear, his entire silhouette became clear again, and when it was incomparably clear, it slowly expanded, as if it was about to fill the entire world. When it reached an extreme, it then started to shrink and fade away. This cycle repeated 360 times before it returned to normal. At that moment, Shui felt that the true qi in her meridians had also changed slightly following Xiao Hua's changes. It seemed to be faintly condensing and faintly dispersing, as if the foundation establishment stage was right in front of her. But how could Shui care whether she reached the foundation establishment stage or not? All of her care and concern was on Xiao Hua. However, when she looked at Xiao Hua, Shui had an extremely strange feeling. She clearly knew that Xiao Hua was sitting in front of her, yet Shui felt that Xiao Hua did not exist. It was truly an empty space. Shui stared at Xiao Hua and bit her lip. She came from a cultivation family and had dabbled in many things. However, she had never heard of Xiao Hua's current situation. She wanted to confirm her guess, but she was also afraid of disturbing Xiao Hua's cultivation, so she endured it. After a moment, she released her divine sense and carefully scanned the area. Ah! Shui almost jumped up. Xiao Hua really wasn't there. Don't let anything happen. Shui was restless. Her previous calmness was nowhere to be seen. If he has gone berserk, can he be awakened now? What if my dear Xiao hasn't turned into a devil, and I've disturbed his cultivation by touching him? After thinking for the time it took to eat a meal, and her divine sense had scanned Xiao Hua's empty image countless times, Shui finally stood up, lightly walked in front of Xiao Hua, raised her hand, and very carefully pushed. Ouch! Shui was immediately dumbfounded. Her push actually hit nothing, and her hand stabbed into Xiao Hua's back. Husband! Shui cried out in a sobbing voice. She was extremely regretful that she did not wake Xiao Hua up earlier. Hey! Wife, what's wrong? Just as Shui cried out, Xiao Hua's voice rang out. That voice was incomparably heavenly, and even had a slight rumbling of thunder. However, when it fell into Shui's ears, it was truly an indescribable pleasant surprise. My dear Xiao. Seeing Xiao Hua's puzzled and smiling gaze, Shui had long forgotten everything. She immediately threw herself at him. Unexpectedly, what welcomed her was still the extremely familiar warm embrace. Shui hugged Xiao Hua with all her strength, as if she wanted to use all the strength in her body. She tightly hugged the thing she had already lost in her arms. Shui, what's wrong with you? Xiao Hua felt a little strange and asked softly. No, nothing. Shui's face had some tears. It was unknown whether they were tears of joy or emotions. Tilda, I've been cold to you these days. Xiao Hua somewhat understood and hugged Shui affectionately for half a day. When Shui's face and ears were red, Xiao Hua smiled and said, It's really been hard on you, my wife. Ian, it's also been hard on me. Shui shyly blinked her eyes and whispered, Husband, give me the jade slip that this lowly concubine gave you. Oh, does my wife want me to see it? Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the pink jade slip. However, after Shui took it, she only wrote a few things inside and returned it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took it and was very confused. Wife, what are you doing? Although I didn't dual cultivate with you, what can't I say? Why are you being so secretive? Shui said with a sly smile, Husband, with Sister Hongxia in front, how can this lowly concubine compare with her? If this lowly concubine doesn't have any secrets in front of you, how can you cherish this lowly concubine? Ah! It can't be. Xiao Hua didn't think that Shui would have such thoughts. She actually wanted to compete for his favor. How could Shui not see it? She hurriedly explained, Husband, don't think too much. This lowly concubine just feels that there are some things that are not the right time to say. When the time is ripe, even if husband doesn't mention it, this lowly concubine will tell husband. So it's like this. Xiao Hua was somewhat skeptical. Husband, have you finished cultivating? Shui changed the topic. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said with a smile, Not yet. Wife, wait a few more days. Hihi, it doesn't matter. Shui said with a smile, You can cultivate for as long as you want. This lowly concubine is not in a hurry. Looking at Shui's appearance of a virtuous wife and loving mother, Xiao Hua's heart was warm. To be honest, helping Shui to build her foundation was just a matter of a hammer. However, Xiao Hua faintly felt that helping others to build their foundation was always going against the heavens. It wasn't something that would happen naturally. It might not be harmless to other people's future cultivation. Therefore, last time he didn't help Sun Shu and Qian Diheng to build their foundation. This time, he also didn't have the intention to help Xue Xue. Wife, stay away from this husband. Finally, use some magic tool to protect yourself, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Xue Xue was shocked. Oh, husband, when you cultivate, will there be a big movement? That's not necessarily true. Xiao Hua didn't hide it and said, it's just the first time cultivating after building my foundation. I don't know what will happen. The first time cultivating after building your foundation? Xue Xue didn't understand. However, she still walked to the farthest corner of the cave and threw out a protective yellow talisman. Seeing that Xue Xue didn't have a protective magic tool, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. In the 4 storage pouches that Xiongyang gave him, there were a lot of spirit stones and medicinal pills. There were also magic tools and cultivation methods. Although he didn't carefully count them and threw them into the space, he still roughly checked them with his divine sense. If he couldn't use the magic tools, wouldn't he be able to give them to Xue Xue? Presumably, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out a storage pouch. He casually looked at it and clapped his hand. A palm-sized magic tool that looked like a fluttering butterfly appeared in midair. Wife, this seems to be a defensive magic tool. You should take it. Take advantage of this time when your husband is cultivating. Why don't you refine it? Don't tell your husband that you don't know how to refine it. Hey, you only took it out now. Xue Xue pouted, seemingly rebuking him. This concubine thought that when eldest senior brother gave it to you, you would pick one for this concubine. You actually made this concubine wait for the stars and the moon until today. That. Xiao Hua was really anxious. He really didn't think too much about it. Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to argue, Xue Xue looked at his storage pouch and said, Husband, at this time, you still don't want to give this concubine one of the 4 storage pouches? Of course, Xiao Hua immediately realized. That's right, he was used to being stingy. He really didn't think about it. He hurriedly handed the storage pouch to Xue Xue and took out another one. He smiled apologetically and said, Wife, what's yours is yours. I'm just taking care of it for you. Ian, that's right. Xue Xue nodded and said, this concubine really likes this attitude. However, since you said so, what's yours is mine. You can take care of it for now. Then, you can take care of it for now. When this concubine needs it, I'll ask you for it. As she spoke, she took the butterfly magic tool and playfully winked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled knowingly and nodded slightly. He put the 2 storage pouches into the space again. Seeing Xiao Hua make the 2 storage pouches disappear very strangely, Xue Xue turned a blind eye. She sat down cross-legged and immersed her divine sense into the magic tool, preparing to refine it. Seeing this, Xiao Hua naturally sat beside her with a smile and released his divine sense to protect Xue Xue. After waiting for 3 days, a group of fluttering butterflies flew out from the magic tool and fluttered around Xue Xue's body, tightly protecting her. Xiao Hua praised, a beauty like jade, butterflies like orchids. This magic tool should be called Butterfly Orchid. Haha, thank you husband for giving it a name. Xue Xue opened her eyes and said, from now on, this magic tool will be called Butterfly Orchid. Great. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Wife, watch carefully. This husband is going to start cultivating. As he spoke, Xiao Hua clapped his hand and a drop of black earth crystal yarrow milk was taken out by him. Naturally, this time Xiao Hua didn't use any magic power to take out the earth crystal yarrow milk like the first time. Instead, he wrapped it with a layer of magic power. Soon after, Xiao Hua silently recited the refining method of the earth crystal yarrow milk in his heart and clapped his hand, just like the fire essence flame crystal, on his shoulder. As soon as the earth crystal yarrow milk entered Xiao Hua's arm, a layer of black mist immediately spread out from his arm. In just a moment, Xiao Hua's entire body was shrouded inside. Then, the black mist began to condense again, like a layer of solid mud, sealing Xiao Hua's entire body inside. Husband. Seeing Xiao Hua actually become like this, although Xue Xue was fully prepared, she still turned pale with fright. PS http forum. Chidian. Thread detail new. ASPX. Thread ID equals 171993010. It was a suggestion made by a book friend in the book review section. Here, the third flower wants to express some thoughts. Nowadays, there are too many cultivators who seek advantages and avoid disadvantages in web novels. Each and every one of them is selfish, or they act according to their abilities. Why is this so? The third flower feels that this is because writers are looking for the so-called human nature. They want to write to a high level and write to a profound level. But in reality, why do all the demonic beasts have to transform into human form? Why is it that among all the cultivation techniques, human cultivation is the smoothest and fastest? Since this is the care of the heavens, then human nature cannot be as cruel, selfish, heartless, and unjust as beast. People must use human nature with love and affection to repay the heavens. Only this kind of person can have success in cultivation and obtain the true essence of cultivation, and not simply increase one's magic power or realm. What is human nature? It is truly profound and has already been written countless times by countless people. In the future, it will still be written for who knows how many years. It can be seen how complex human nature is. Let others write about the dark human nature. The third flower still likes positive and joyful human nature. In addition, although human nature has an ugly side, there is no need to infinitely magnify it and roar in every place, making people feel that there is no sunlight in this world. The third flower's living environment and growth experience may be different from Wang Yu's, so his perspective on problems was naturally different. Thus, the characters he wrote were also completely different. If Xiao Hua did not help Xiongyang fight over the Thunder Beast's inner core, then he would not be Xiao Hua, but Han Li. Hihi, I haven't nagged for a long time. Everyone, please forgive me .. These words are all free of charge. -8. Chapter 1917. Shwe, don't worry. At this moment, Xiao Hua's voice came, your husband is practicing a secret technique. Just wait. Then, with a clear cry, Xiao Hua's phoenix Dharma body came out of the black gas, spread its wings and flew in the air. Above the phoenix Dharma body, there was also a layer of faint, solid black gas entwining. Okay. Hearing Xiao Hua's voice and seeing the phoenix Dharma body, Shwe felt relieved. She stared at the black statue-like Xiao Hua for several days before starting her own practice. As soon as the earth crystal yarrow milk entered Xiao Hua's body, it immediately turned into a flood of earth element spiritual energy, rushing into Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua hurriedly used the secret technique of Zun Shu to refine the zhongyao milk, trying his best to absorb this huge amount of earth element spiritual energy into his meridian. However, at this moment, just as Xiao Hua had expected, the 13200 small dots in his physical body, the 13200 small dots in the phoenix celestial body, his bones, and meridians all began to appear one after another, absorbing this huge amount of earth-type spiritual energy, leaving Xiao Hua with only 30% of it. Another 100 days passed, and the black gas around Xiao Hua's body began to gradually fade. Finally, it was absorbed back into his body and disappeared. By now, that drop of earth crystal yarrow milk had been completely absorbed by Xiao Hua's meridians, turning into tens of thousands of tiny black spots, which were visible to the naked eye, floating in Xiao Hua's meridians. If Xiao Hua could refine all of these tiny black spots into his energy, presumably, his power would be able to improve by another level. Xiao Hua's body moved slightly, and the phoenix Dharma body that had been coiled above his head flapped its wings. The black gas around the Dharma body had faded a lot, but it seemed that there was still a lot that had not been refined. However, after 100 days of hard work, the phoenix Dharma body had become more solid. After Xiao Hua absorbed the phoenix celestial body back into his body, he slightly released his divine sense. He couldn't help but feel slightly happy. Previously, Xiao Hua's divine sense could only cover a distance of several tens of li. Although it was a lot more than the 10 li of Foundation establishment, it was still a lot less than the 100 li of Jindan. But now, after refining the earth crystal yarrow milk into his meridians, his divine sense had increased by another 10 li. Needless to say, his cultivation had increased by a lot. Go tilde Xiao Hua opened his mouth again and the execution dream flew out. It turned into 8 rays of sword light and sat cross-legged in the cave. Split tilde Xiao Hua shouted again. The 8 rays of sword light flashed and split into 16 rays of green light. Haha, that's great. Xiao Hua was pleasantly surprised. He hadn't expected that sword plays the world, which hadn't made any progress all this time, would also make progress as his realm and divine sense increase. Divide again. Xiao Hua felt that he still had some strength left in his heart, so he unconsciously shouted again. Sure enough, the 16 sword lights swayed again, and with great difficulty, they turned into 32 green lights. After practicing sword plays the world for a while under the 32 sword lights, Xiao Hua put away the execution dream and stood up. Seeing Xiao Hua stand up, Shui smiled and also put away her cultivation. She scanned with her divine sense and said in surprise, "Husband, isn't your cultivation too fast? Just 200 days, plus the 1 year after foundation establishment, you've only cultivated for 2 years. Why do I feel like you've already been in foundation establishment for more than 10 years? Haha," Xiao Hua laughed and said, "How can it be as fast as you think? It's just that your husband's divine sense is slightly stronger, maybe." Shui only cared about whether Xiao Hua was safe or not. As for the level of cultivation, she didn't care too much at this time. Let's go tilde Xiao Hua put away the rabbit formation and said with a smile, "For your husband's cultivation, I've already delayed your time to look at the sea. It's your husband's fault. Hihi, knowing your mistakes is the greatest virtue." Tilde Shui pursed her lips and said, "Then why aren't we hurrying?" So Xiao Hua took Shui's hand and rushed towards Meng Kingdom at a leisurely pace. At the border between the state of Xi and the state of Meng, not far from the Mojiao Black Forest, Yang Yu and the others were standing in midair. Yang Yu frowned and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Qian, didn't Xiao Hua go to Haoming City? Why haven't we seen any traces of the two of them after chasing them here?" "Yes, we couldn't find them in Haoming City at all. We also couldn't find any traces of them at the various teleportation arrays. It's as if the two of them disappeared into thin air," Qian Han also said in distress. "If we continue forward, we'll reach Mojiao Black Forest. After passing through this dangerous place, we should be in Meng Kingdom. The two of them went out to train, they wouldn't go to Meng Kingdom, right?" Jieming looked at the Mojiao Black Forest in the distance, which was like a monster lying on the ground, and said hesitantly. Liang Yu looked at the 3 of them and said slowly, "Unless the 2 of them didn't come to Haoming City, the 4 of us will search separately. We won't miss such a large area. We'll go back to Haoming City first. After resting for a few days, we'll go back to search." Yang Yu gritted his teeth and said, "This bastard cut off my bloodline. We're absolutely irreconcilable. I must kill this bastard with my own hands." Tilde Qian Han coughed twice and said, "Xiaoyu continent is so big. Since this bastard didn't come to Haoming City, who knows where he went? Junior brother Yang may not be able to find this bastard even if we go back to search. In fact, we should have asked our fellow disciples in Shihuang Town to kill Xiong Yang, Yang Qinglian, and the others who returned to Yulei Sec. Tempich tilde senior brother Qian, are you doubting my choice that day?" Yang Yu sneered and said angrily. Qian Han was about to refute, but Jieming laughed and said, "Look at what junior brother Yang said. In fact, I had the same idea that day, but I saw that junior brother Yang had a blood feud with Xiao Hua. That's why we rushed to Haoming City to look for Xiao Hua. If junior brother Yang accuses us like this, we really have nothing to say." Yang Yu knew that this matter couldn't be exposed, let alone turned hostile, so he quickly said with a smile, "I spoke rashly because I was impatient. Let's go. We'll go to Haoming City. I'll prepare a banquet to apologize. Let's take a rest first, and then we'll discuss what to do." Qian Han and the others naturally turned their anger into joy and returned to Haoming City together. More than half a year later, Xiao Hua and Shui appeared in a small town not far from Haoming City. This small town was located on the side of the river, and there were majestic mountains on all sides. The river was turbulent all the way, but it suddenly slowed down here. Countless fish in the water reproduced here, and the aquatic products were abundant. Not only cultivators came and went here, but there were also many mortals living here. Therefore, the water and mountains were beautiful, and the waterbirds were soaring. It was really a beautiful scene out of this world. The riverside restaurant that Xiao Hua and Xue Xue stepped into was opened by a mortal. When they saw Xiao Hua and Xue Xue walking in hand, the waiter, who had been waiting at the door, immediately came forward and called out respectfully, "Welcome to my Cold River house, Senior Immortal and Fairy. Please follow me upstairs." "Yes, please lead the way." Xiao Hua nodded slightly and followed the waiter into the Cold River house. Senior Immortals in the private rooms on the 4th floor. The waiter was very happy and shouted loudly as he led the way. Hearing that Senior Immortals were coming, the short and fat shopkeeper standing behind the counter couldn't stand still anymore. He quickly walked out from behind and waited respectfully. Xiao Hua entered the Cold River house and looked around. He saw that there were more than a dozen round tables in the restaurant that was about 40 to 50 feet in size. It was noon, and there were many people eating. The noisy hall immediately became silent when they heard that Senior Immortals were coming. Dozens of pairs of eyes were looking at Xiao Hua and Xue Xue with respect and envy. Xue Xue frowned slightly, obviously unhappy. She only looked at the stairs in front of her and ignored the mortals. Xiao Hua smiled at everyone and even nodded slightly. -8. Chapter 1918. Welcome, Immortals. When the shopkeeper saw Xue Xue's celestial demeanor, he knew that the waiter was right. He bowed respectfully and said, "I am Han Jiang, the shopkeeper of this restaurant. Please come upstairs, Immortals." Xue Xue didn't comment and stepped on the stairs. Xiao Hua fell behind Xue Xue and said with a smile, "Thank you, shopkeeper Han." When Han Jiang heard this, he was flattered and said with an apologetic smile, "Immortals coming is already my humble restaurant's honor." "Immortals, please." Xiao Hua asked at the side of the stairs, "Shopkeeper Han, is Cold River Restaurant's business good?" "Ah, business." Han Jiang seemed to be very surprised by Xiao Hua's question and almost forgot himself. He immediately said with an apologetic smile, "SOSO, SOSO. Barely making a living, barely making a living, hee." Xiao Hua smiled. He pointed at the fishing boats on the river, as well as the passers-by, and said with a smile, "This is a paradise, all the passers-by are resting here. Even I, a cultivator, have to stop when I see such beautiful scenery. How can your Cold River house's business not be good?" Hee. Immortals really understand the people's feelings. What you said makes sense. Han Jiang's fat face was filled with a charming smile. When Xiao Hua saw this, he didn't ask any more questions and quickly went up to the 4th floor. The 2nd and 3rd floors were obviously much less crowded. Moreover, they all seemed to have some status or were refined scholars. It was much quieter. When these people heard footsteps coming up the stairs, they all raised their eyes. However, when they saw the two immortal-like people and the respectful Han Jiang, they immediately understood. Therefore, their gazes became the same as the diners on the 1st floor, filled with fear. "Immortals, my humble restaurant is divided into 4 floors. Only the top floor is prepared for immortals. The other 3 floors are for us mortals." Seeing Xue Xue frown again, Han Jiang didn't dare to be negligent and quickly explained, "There are already a few immortals on the 4th floor enjoying the scenery. Perhaps they are familiar with fellow Taoist." Haha. Xiao Hua smiled. He clapped his hand and took out a spiritual stone. He gave it to Han Jiang and said, "We came from afar, so we won't have any friends that we know. Also, we came here to rest and enjoy the scenery. This is a spiritual stone. I wonder if shopkeeper Han will accept it." "Withdraw, withdraw." Han Jiang's eyes fell on the sparkling and translucent spirit stone, and a trace of greed appeared in his eyes. He immediately took it and nodded vigorously. That's good. Find some fresh fruits and bring them up. If there are any delicious wines, bring some too." Xiao Hua said as he went up to the 4th floor. Sure enough, just as Han Jiang had said, the 4th floor was even bigger than the 1st floor. All 4 sides were hollow, with 3 sides facing the river. There were only 3 huge tables in the spacious pavilion, and these 3 tables were placed on the side facing the river. At this moment, there were already several qi condensation cultivators sitting in the middle facing the river. They were holding wine cups and looking at the beautiful scenery while shaking their heads and talking about something. Hearing Xiao Hua's voice and the footsteps of the shopkeeper, these cultivators very casually turned their heads to look. First, they saw Shue's beautiful appearance and peak qi condensation cultivation. They were all shocked. They looked at each other and were about to stand up. However, when Xiao Hua walked up, they didn't dare to hesitate and immediately jumped up from their chairs. They bowed and saluted. "Greetings, senior." Xiao Hua looked at these 5 cultivators. There were 3 men and 2 women. They were all around the 10th layer of qi condensation. Seeing that they had similar appearances, Xiao Hua knew that they were probably disciples from a cultivation family that came out to experience the world. Thus, he smiled and waved his sleeve. "You can sit as you please." "Yes." The oldest disciple respectfully replied. Xiao Hua looked at them and was about to walk to the table at the side. The oldest disciple quickly pointed at his seat and said, "Senior, this place is the best. Senior, please come here and sit." "Hihi, no need." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Just wait and enjoy. I and my lover will be right next to you." Hearing Xiao Hua call her lover in front of strangers, Shue's face slightly reddened. Even her head slightly drooped. She followed Xiao Hua to the table at the side like a little girl. "Yes, we will listen to senior's instructions." The oldest disciple could only respectfully reply. Seeing the group of disciples respectfully addressing Xiao Hua as senior, Han Jiang was happy and at the same time a bit afraid. He only thought that Xiao Hua was young and would have the same status as these disciples. How could he have known that Xiao Hua was a senior? How could he not know how powerful Xiao Hua was? Moreover, powerful seniors mostly had strange tempers. If he wasn't careful, he could suffer a calamity. "Why aren't you taking out all the specialties of Cold River House?" The oldest disciple saw that Han Jiang was in a daze and immediately scolded. "If senior isn't satisfied, don't blame me." Cough cough. Xiao Hua coughed and said, "Fellow Daoist, don't scare shopkeeper Han. Sit down, I will only stay for a while." "Yes, senior, please do as you wish." That disciple shrunk his neck and raised his head to signal the other 4 to sit down. Soon after, Xiao Hua said warmly, "Shopkeeper Han, go down and prepare." "Yes, I will come right away." Han Jiang seemed to have woken up from a dream and promptly rolled down from the 4th floor. After Han Jiang left, the entire 4th floor regained its tranquility. The 5 aura refining cultivators who were gesticulating and laughing non-stop were now all obedient. They obediently sat on their respective chairs with their heads lowered, looking at the fresh fruits and delicacies in front of them. Alas, Xiao Hua sighed. He looked at Shui beside him somewhat helplessly and transmitted his voice. "It was originally a good atmosphere, but it was ruined by me, a foundation building senior. These aura refining aristocratic families' disciples are too reserve." Shui disagreed and also transmitted her voice. "You're a foundation building senior, so they should naturally be respectful in front of you. If they don't respect you and cause trouble, then they wouldn't be disciples of aristocratic families. But wouldn't that make them lose a bit of their spirit? Lose the vigor of young people?" Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He thought back to that day in Flame Forest Swamp, when he argued with Zhang Yi, Xiong Minute, and the others, and his eldest martial brother kept his head down and didn't dare to say anything. Wasn't that exactly the case? "Forget it." Xiao Hua raised his head and said, "Which aristocratic family's disciples are you?" Reporting to senior, junior is from Mo Cloud Village's Chong clan. The eldest disciple promptly stood up and said respectfully. Xiao Hua saw that the disciple didn't say anything more or less and was abnormally obedient in his introduction. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. His gaze swept over them and he asked again, "What are your names?" Reporting to senior, junior is called Chong Li Hao. Sure enough, after the eldest disciple finished speaking, he sat down obediently. Then the other 2 men and 2 women reported their names in order of age. They were Chong Limin, Chong Liqiang, Chong Yulian, and Chong Xuemei. Seeing that they were so obedient, Xiao Hua also felt a bit awkward in his heart. He didn't say anything else and turned his head to look at Xue Xue with a smile. He pointed his finger and said, "Wife, look at that fishing boat in the river. Why are there so many birds standing on the side of the boat?" Before Xue Xue could say anything, the female cultivator named Chong Yulian not far away laughed out loud. Lian Chong Lamine was shocked and hurriedly scolded, quickly apologized to Senior. Chong Yulian immediately stood up. She was very frightened and wanted to apologize. But when Xiao Hua heard her laugh, he immediately knew he was wrong. He had always been modest and didn't think much of it. He waved his hand and said, "Little girl, what's the matter with these birds? Come here and explain to me." Chong Yulian's small face was full of excitement. She trotted to Xiao Hua's side. After bowing, she respectfully said, "Senior is talking about cormorants, not birds. Senior, look, there is a thin rope around the cormorant's neck. It was made by a fisherman. Cormorants are good at swimming and live by eating fish. The fisherman tied the cormorant's neck like this. The cormorant couldn't eat the fish it caught, so it could only be stuck in its throat. The fisherman only needed to stretch out his hand and pinch the fish out." "Oh, there is such a fishing method." Xiao Hua was surprised. In his memory, it seemed to be something like fishing nets. After Chong Yulian finished speaking, he carefully looked again. Sure enough, it was like this. This fisherman, he really reaped without sowing. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and laughed. It's just a pity for the cormorant. It worked hard for nothing and became a wedding dress for others. Xue Xue curled her lips and said, "I'll let the two seniors know." Chong Yulian smiled apologetically and said, "In the cold river, there are only thumb-sized fish. If it was a fishing net, I'm afraid the harvest would be very little. This junior has been used to seeing cormorants fishing since young, so I didn't think much of it." "That's right. Under the heavenly Tao, everyone has their own opportunities. As long as you can see your own path, that is the path to heaven," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Unfortunately, not only did Chong Yulian not understand these words, even Xue Xue was confused. Just as Xue Xue was about to say something, the shopkeeper of the Cold River House, Han Jiang, personally came up with a large plate of fresh fruits. Looking at the sweat on Han Jiang's forehead, it seemed that the fresh fruits were very heavy. Han Jiang put the plate of fruits on the table and said respectfully, "Immortal Senior, please eat." Thank you for your trouble, shopkeeper Han." Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. Han Jiang was even more flattered. Chong Yulian looked at Xiao Hua with interest. It seemed that she had never seen a senior so polite to a secular person. Although fresh fruits were delicious, they couldn't be compared to spirit fruits. Xiao Hua ate a few and felt a little bored. Han Jiang saw that Xiao Hua's face didn't have any joy, so he quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Immortal Senior, just now, a fisherman sent over a special cabbage from the cold river. I wonder if Immortal Senior wants to use it." "Cabbage?" Xiao Hua was stunned and said curiously, "This thing is often found in the mortal world. Even if it's a special feature of your cold river, what's so strange about it?" When Chong Yulian heard the word cabbage, her face also froze. Then she heard Xiao Hua's question and knew that Xiao Hua had misunderstood. She quickly said to Han Jiang, "Shopkeeper Han, since there is such a precious thing, why ask? Quickly make it and send it up." Yes. When Han Jiang heard, he quickly rolled down the stairs. -8. Chapter 1919. Hearing Chong Yulian say that the cabbage was a rare thing, Xiao Hua naturally knew that he was wrong again, so he didn't say anything and just looked at Chong Yulian with a smile. Sure enough, Chong Yulian whispered, "Senior, this cabbage is not an ordinary dish, it is a rare fish in the Han River." "Hey!" Xue Xue was surprised and asked, "Since it is a fish, why is it called a dish? And it is just a fish, how is it rare?" Senior, this fish didn't exist tens of thousands of years ago. Because of a love story of life and death, it appeared in the Han River. And it is said that this fish only appears on the 15th day of every month, so it is very rare." Chong Yulian smiled and said, "This fish is really delicious. It doesn't need any seasoning at all, just steaming it. Even if I am a cultivator, I will savor it for a long time after eating it. Really? What kind of sad story is it? Can you tell me? Shue Shue was curious and asked anxiously. Miss Yulian must be thirsty. Eat a spiritual fruit first, then we can talk. Xiao Hua smiled and took out a palm-sized spiritual fruit from the space and handed it to Chong Yulian. Chong Yulian took it and said with a smile, "Thank you, senior." After that, she put it in her mouth and ate it in small bites. Who knew that when this unknown spiritual fruit entered her mouth, it immediately turned into a gentle spiritual power and rushed into Chong Yulian's meridians. Chong Yulian's face was full of joy. She didn't dare to neglect it and immediately sat cross-legged with her palms facing the sky. Chong Lihao and the others were surprised when they saw Chong Yulian's strange movements. But when they saw her familiar method of cultivation, they immediately showed admiration on their faces. After a few minutes, Chong Yulian opened her eyes and got up from the ground. She bowed and said, "Thank you, senior." She knew in her heart that although it was only a few minutes of cultivation and the spiritual fruit didn't have much spiritual power, this spiritual fruit seemed to be a bit special. The power to nourish the meridians was far greater than the spiritual power in her body. She was afraid that she would benefit a lot in the future. It's okay. Tell me the story. Actually, Xiao Hua himself didn't know what this spirit fruit was. He had a lot of it in his space, so he just casually took out one. Yes. Chong Yulian chose her words carefully and said, "Tens of thousands of years ago, there was a Zayus-Henist family near Han River. This family was very famous in the country of Shi. They had a direct descendant who was a girl. She was talented and beautiful, and she reached the 12th layer of Qi refining before the age of 20. She was known as the most promising female cultivator in the country of Shi. However, such a rising star in the world of cultivators fell in love with a poor scholar surnamed Yu, who was studying in an ancient temple on the banks of the Han River. Because of love, she gave birth to an inner demon, which prevented her from making any progress. She couldn't even enter the building foundation stage from the age of 20 to the age of 30. She didn't even seize the opportunity to enter a cultivator's sect. In the beginning, the cultivation family thought that the female cultivator had encountered difficulties in her cultivation, so they tried every possible means to improve her cultivation. But in the end, they found out what the problem was. "Senior, you should know that as cultivators, how can we marry a mortal? Even delaying his cultivation for the sake of mortals? If she didn't cut off this knot in her heart, she would never be able to enter the building foundation stage. As a result, the family head of the cultivation clan was enraged and wanted to capture Scholar Yu and kill him on the spot. However, he was afraid that the female cultivator would hate him and leave the clan. In the future, not only would her cultivation not improve, she would also not recognize the sect. The family head thought hard for several days and finally came up with a vicious plan. On the 15th day of the 7th month, he used the name of the female cultivator to bring the scholar surnamed Yu to the shoals of the Han River. Then, he used a spell to raise the water level of the Han River. Because the scholar kept his promise, he didn't leave even when a fishing boat passed by. He was drowned to death. Shue Shue's expression changed and she said, Then what about the female cultivator? How did she find out about this? Since she knew, wouldn't she be exposed? Senior, you should know that the scholar surnamed Yu was easy to trick. The family head used the female cultivator's name to invite the scholar surnamed Yu and then had the scholar write a letter to invite the female cultivator. In the female cultivator's eyes, wouldn't she think that the scholar surnamed Yu was the one who invited her? Chong Yulian smiled and said, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the family head only needed to call the female cultivator over and give her a few instructions to stall for time. How long would it take for this vicious plan to disappear? Indeed. Shue Shue glanced at Xiao Hua with a silent expression. When the female cultivator came out from the family head's place, she saw the water level of the Han River rise and thought of the place the scholar surnamed Yu had arranged. She immediately felt that something was wrong. When she flew to the shoals of the Han River, there was no sign of the shoals. Thus, the female cultivator flew to the ancient temple to search. Then, she followed the river downstream and finally found the scholar surnamed Yu's corpse 15 kilometers away. The scholar surnamed Yu's face was calm even in death. He actually said that there was a blood letter in his bosom. What was written? Shue Shue anxiously asked. When the water comes, I will wait for you in the water. When the fire comes, I will wait for you in the ashes. Qiong Yulian whispered. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. The scholar surnamed Yu was so infatuated with the world. That's right. When the female cultivator finished reading it, she was filled with great sorrow and shouted, You, I have wasted your life. Today, I will follow you into the water. Qiong Yulian continued. Thus, the female cultivator sealed her magic power and jumped into the Han River. At that moment, thunder roared and the entire Han River overflowed with brilliance. From then on the 15th day of every month, a pure white, almost transparent fish would swim out of the Han River. Because the scholar surnamed Yu called the female cultivator Little Cabbage, the fisherman by the river also called the fish Little Cabbage. Fu Tilda Xiao Hua let out a long sigh. He clearly felt that there were some flaws in this story, but he still felt sad. He looked at Shue Shue again and saw tears flickering in his eyes. Shue Shue sadly said, There are always joys and sorrows in this world. I don't know when all the lovers in this world will be together. You will, my wife. Xiao Hua held her hand and said, It is precisely because of this love that this world becomes beautiful. And this beautiful love is also the manifestation of warmth in this world. But at this moment, Qiong Yulian whispered, All lovers, no matter if they are mortals or cultivators, as long as they come to the side of the Han River, they will eat the little cabbage as an auspicious omen. Moreover, there are only 2 little cabbages every month. Senior actually managed to come across them today. This junior will go and take a look. Why is the shopkeeper so slow? Wait. Shue Shue's expression changed greatly and anxiously said, Husband, quickly go and stop the shopkeeper. Why is he still eating such a pitiful little cabbage? -8. Chapter 1920. Yes Tilda At the same time, Xiao Hua also thought of this. With a sweep of his divine sense, he suddenly flew up and quickly rushed down the cold river house. Ah! If it was flying, Xiao Hua's speed was fast, but getting up from the chair, flying out, and flying down again, this was a few turns. How could Qiong Yulian not be surprised? But before she could recover from her shock, Xiao Hua flew back with the big water basin in his hand. He smiled and said, Fortunately, the fisherman was bargaining with shopkeeper Han. Shopkeeper Han was just about to kill it. If he was a bit later, this little cabbage would have died. Thank you, husband. Shue Shue finally smiled. Senior's cultivation is profound, this junior really admires it. Qiong Yulian said respectfully. When Shue Shue stood up and lowered her head to look at the fish in the basin, she couldn't help but be a little moved. She saw that in the basin, there was a pure white, almost transparent fish. It swayed its tail like a dress and swam around in the clear water. Its posture was so graceful, just like a young girl dancing in the water. And on the forehead of the fish, there was a red round dot, which was especially eye-catching. Immortal Elder, Immortal Elder. At the stairs, shopkeeper Han's panting voice sounded, that little cabbage was, but when Han Jiang saw the big water basin on the table, he immediately understood and pointed at it, not knowing what to do. Shopkeeper Han, thank you for your bargaining. Xiao Hua didn't even turn his head. He waved his hand and took out 10 spirit stones. He placed them on the table and said with a smile, however, the fisherman also worked hard. If I could give him more, I would give him more. This is I's reward for you. This little cabbage I want it. Thank you, Immortal Elder. Seeing so many spirit stones on the table, how could Han Jiang have any complaints? His hands trembled as he put the spirit stones into his clothes and said excitedly, What was the original name of the little cabbage? What was the name of the scholar surnamed Yu? Shue Shue looked at the fish and asked in a low voice. This. Qiong Yulian hesitated. Shopkeeper Han said loudly, This little brother knows that the little cabbage in the story is surnamed Huang, but I don't know his name. The scholar surnamed Yu is called Yu Zhongquan. Is there a grave for these two at the bank of the cold river? Shue Shue asked again. Grave? Shopkeeper Han was stunned. Then, he smiled and said, "Female immortal, this is just a legend. How can there be a tomb? It's impossible for people to pay homage to them. Even if there is a tomb, I'm afraid it's still under the control of that cultivation family," Xiao Hua reminded. Xue Xue was disappointed. Actually, this little cabbage still needs to be eaten. Only by eating it can the two immortals look good together. Shopkeeper Han didn't forget to remind them. Xue Xue glared at Han Jiang, scaring him into shrinking his neck. Unfortunately, he was too fat, and his neck was full of wrinkles. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shrink his neck. "Ha tilde," Xiao Hua chuckled. Just as he was about to speak, a strand of divine sense swept across the air. It swept past everyone and landed on the basin. "Great!" A loud and clear voice sounded. "I have come to this cold river more than 10 times, and I've never met a little cabbage. Today is my lucky day." Xiao Hua slightly frowned. He looked up and saw a male and a female cultivator flying over from the air. The two looked very intimate. The female cultivator was at the peak of the aura refining realm. She was fair and plump, as if she was sticking to the cultivator's body. The male cultivator was at the middle stage of the foundation building realm. He had dark skin and a thick beard that covered more than half of his face. Moreover, the beard was thick and long, as if it was pricked on his face. "Greetings, Senior." Chong Li Hao and the others were dumbfounded. They hurriedly stood up and bowed deeply. Xue Xue didn't dare to be negligent. She stood up and bowed like Chong Yulian. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and raised his hand. "Greetings, fellow Daoist." That cultivator didn't think it was strange. He smiled and said, "I have been paying attention to this little cabbage for more than 10 years. Today, I finally see it. I wonder if fellow Daoist is willing to give it to me. Sorry, I want to keep it for myself." Xiao Hua didn't seem to hesitate and immediately replied. "Oh." That cultivator was slightly surprised, and the smile on his face disappeared in an instant. "Husband." At this time, the female cultivator held the male cultivator's arm and said, "I've heard about the freshness of this little cabbage, but I've never tasted it. Moreover, if you and I eat this little cabbage together, won't we be together forever?" As she spoke, the female cultivator's face flushed. "Wife, don't be anxious. Let me discuss it with this fellow Daoist. I'm sure this fellow Daoist will tactfully give it to me," that male cultivator said with a smile. The generous actions of these two people not only made Chong Yulian and Chong Shuamei's ears turn red, but even Xue Xue's face turned red. After all, she and Xiao Hua were intimate in front of others. When did they show it in front of others? "Fellow Daoist, please." That male cultivator cupped his hands and said, "I'm Shong Cheng from the 10,000 Poisons sect. This is my wife, my Xiaoyaro from the Immortal Poison sect. How should I address you?" 10,000 Poisons sect. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's face immediately turned cold. After thinking for a moment, he returned the greeting and said, "I'm Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect. This is my junior sister Xue Xue." Xiao Hua originally wanted to call Xue Xue wife, but after seeing my Xiaoyaro from the Immortal Poison sect being so licentious, Shong Cheng also called her wife. Since he and Xue Xue didn't dual cultivate, if he also called her wife, wouldn't it be the same as them? Therefore, he changed the way he addressed her and called her junior sister. Hearing Xiao Hua call her junior sister, Xue Xue sweetly smiled at Xiao Hua. She clearly understood what Xiao Hua was thinking. Imperial Thunder Sect. Shong Cheng was surprised. He didn't expect to meet a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect in this remote place. The 10,000 Poisons sect was far from being comparable to the Imperial Thunder sect. Although his cultivation was much higher than Xiao Hua's, he didn't dare to bully the weak with his spear. "That fellow Daoist Xiao." Shong Cheng thought for a moment and said tactfully, "No matter what price fellow Daoist Xiao used to buy this thing, I'll compensate you with 10 times the price. Would fellow Daoist Xiao consider it?" "No need." Xiao Hua didn't even need to look at Xue Xue's somewhat worried and apprehensive expression. He very decisively refused. "Husband tilde tilde tilde." My Xiaoyao's tone was unusually gentle. Her voice seemed to reach Shang Cheng's bones, making him very happy. This lowly concubine hopes to be together with my husband forever. Yesterday, I just made a wish, and today, I encountered this rare lucky thing in the cold river. Isn't this the favor the heavens gave us? As she spoke, her eyes flowed with 10,000 kinds of emotions. It was indescribably moving. However, the bashful expression on her face made her seem very young and inexperienced. Not to mention Qiong Liqiang and the others, even Xiao Hua swallowed a mouthful of saliva and secretly said, "If Shui is like this." But immediately, the Buddha's Sariya in Xiao Hua's mind faintly flashed with golden light. A wave of coolness emerged and Xiao Hua immediately became clear-headed. Ayo, this immortal poison sect really has some skills. Xiao Hua immediately realized that this might be one of my Xiaoyao's techniques. Sure enough, Shang Cheng used all his strength to hug my Xiaoyao. He turned his head towards Xiao Hua and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, name a price. As long as I can take it out, I'll definitely satisfy you." Xiao Hua smiled. He raised his right hand, extended his index finger and slightly waved it. He said, "This is my junior sister's beloved item. Even if all the treasures in the world are precious, they can't compare." Xiao Hua. Shue's sweet smile was really pure as a cabbage in the water. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, are you not giving me face?" Shang Cheng's expression was slightly cold. He faintly released the pressure of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, causing the wind in the cold river house to slightly move. "What is face? I don't see any face in the cold river house." Xiao Hua simply didn't care about him. He didn't even release his pressure and only calmly said, "Ha ha ha." Shang Cheng pushed his hand, pushing my Xiaoyao to the side. "I'm giving face to the thunder controlling sect, but I'm not giving face to a pretty boy like you. Since you don't know what face is, I'll teach you what face is on behalf of your master from the thunder controlling sect." After he said that, he clapped his hands. A hook that looked like a full moon flew out. It streaked across the air in a pitch-black arc and hovered above Shang Cheng's head. The hook was about a foot long, and both its inner and outer layers were sharp blades. These blades weren't as shiny as normal swords, but they were pitch-black. If one's divine sense slightly swept over it, they would be able to sense the gloomy coldness inside. Needless to say, it was definitely dipped in poison. Huh! Seeing Shang Cheng take out his magic tool, the Qiong family siblings were greatly alarmed. They both retreated simultaneously, appearing very terrified. This was a fight between foundation building cultivators. It wasn't something aura refining cultivators like them could approach. Xiao Hua slightly frowned. He moved his divine sense and saw that the entire fourth floor of the cold river house was emitting a faint brilliance. There was actually a restriction protecting it. Presumably, Hanjiang was afraid that cultivators would attack and destroy the cold river house, so he asked someone to set it up. "Junior martial sister, wait here for a moment," Xiao Hua said to Shui with a smile. Be careful, senior martial brother." Shui clapped her hands and took out the butterfly orchid. She activated her magic power and first protected her body. Only then did she say with a sweet smile. Although she said be careful, there was only lingering concern in her tone. "Fellow Daoist Shang is indeed formidable, daring to teach me a lesson on behalf of my master from the thunder controlling sect. This young master wants to see what kind of ability you have." Xiao Hua took a step forward and flew out of the cold river house, standing in midair. Quickly look, the immortals are fighting." Xiao Hua's figure had just appeared in midair when a crowd of secular people shouted, "Hee, as expected, newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers." Shang Cheng sneered, and his figure also flew out of the cold river house. "A little brat who just recently entered the foundation building realm actually dares to challenge me. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know how to write the word respect." Go. Shang Cheng pointed his finger and activated his magic power. The crescent-shaped hook flashed through the air and charged towards Xiao Hua. -8. Chapter 1921. Xiao Hua sneered and clapped his hands. With a wong-wong sound, the cloud-suppressing seal flew out. At this moment, The cloud-suppressing seal was different from before. As soon as the cloud-suppressing seal flew into the air, it immediately glowed with a bronze brilliance. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed in like a swarm of bees, creating a small breeze. As the spiritual energy poured in, the cloud-suppressing seal's brilliance flourished. That brilliance was like a sharp sword, about a foot long. The most important thing was that the beast head on the cloud-suppressing seal was originally incomplete and simply not worth mentioning. However, at this moment, under the stimulation of Xiao Hua's transcendence energy, there was actually a faint shadow of it, appearing abnormally vivid. Magic weapon? Seeing the might of the cloud-suppressing seal, Shongcheng's expression immediately changed. However, at this moment, his magic weapon had already rushed in front of Xiao Hua. How could he sheath his blade? Attack! Xiao Hua clapped his hands. The cloud-suppressing seal, which had already become 3 feet long, faintly moved. A dazzling yellow cloud fell from the cloud-suppressing seal, covering the curved hook with incomparable speed. With a shua sound, the curved hook streaked across the cloud. Listening to the sound, it sounded like it fell on silk. However, when Shongcheng's divine sense swept over, he already sensed that his magic weapon seemed to have fallen into a swamp. The cloud-suppressing seal's poison and sharpness were both useless against it. Moreover, Shongcheng was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. How could he not know how to use magic weapons? Previously, he was still somewhat lucky, hoping that Xiao Hua's transcendence energy was not enough to activate this shabby magic weapon. However, seeing the magic weapon's appearance, he immediately knew that Xiao Hua had already completed the sacrificial refining of the cloud-suppressing seal. Even if his magic weapon could defeat Xiao Hua, it would not be as easy as he previously thought. What should I do? Shongcheng's thoughts rapidly turned. As for Xiao Hua, he looked at the cloud-suppressing seal in the air with interest. This magic weapon was his first magic weapon, and he used it the most. When he was in the aura refining stage, he had used it a lot. However, it wasn't until he reached the foundation establishment stage that he had a feeling that this cloud-suppressing seal could follow his thoughts and do anything. Roar! Xiao Hua let out a long roar and grabbed the air with his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal buzzed as if it was responding to Xiao Hua. Soon after, the cloud-suppressing seal started to emit a faint light. This was the condensation of the world's spiritual energy. It then gradually expanded until it was 2 meters in size. Only then did it stop. A kind of calmness and a kind of thickness came from the cloud-suppressing seal. Shongcheng sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Xiao Hua again. To be able to use a magic weapon to such a level, this transcendence energy definitely did not belong to a cultivator who had just entered the foundation establishment stage. Even if there was a difference between him and Xiao Hua, the difference was still visible. Imperial Thunder Sect, as expected of a great sect. Haha! Shongcheng waved his hand and put away his magic weapon. He laughed. With fellow Daoist Xiao's cultivation, you really are a disciple of a great sect. You really make me envious. Alas, that day, I also went to the Thunderclap Peak to become a disciple. Unfortunately, my physique did not meet the requirements. Otherwise, I might have already become fellow Daoist Xiao's senior martial brother. Seeing Shongcheng put away his magic weapon and land on top of the cold river house, Xiao Hua's face turned cold. He snorted and pointed at the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal turned into a ball of light and landed on his hand. It also landed on top of the house. What? Fellow Daoist Shong, didn't you want to teach me a lesson on behalf of my master? Xiao Hua did not have any good feelings towards the 10,000 Poisons sect. He sneered, what is the meaning of landing on top of the house? Could it be that you want to use my junior martial sister to threaten me? Shongcheng naturally had this intention, but how could he say it out loud? Seeing Xiao Hua being so impolite, his smile froze and he unhappily said, I didn't fight with you because I respect your Imperial Thunder Sect. I'm not afraid of you. As for using your junior martial sister to threaten you, do you think I can't kill you? Hee. Xiao Hua knew the power of the butterfly orchid. He was not afraid of Shongcheng doing something dirty. He only laughed and ignored him. Husband. My Xiaoyao's eyes were still filled with reluctance. She looked at the water basin in front of Xue Xue. Wife. Shong Cheng frowned, indicating for her not to speak. The Qiong siblings seemed to have not recovered from their shock. They stared blankly at Xiao Hua. They had never met a cultivator who could challenge a cultivator above their level and win without a fight. They were filled with longing. As for the fat shopkeeper Han Jiang, he was very knowledgeable. He quickly smiled apologetically and said, "We are all immortals. Naturally, harmony is the most important thing. Senior Immortal, this humble restaurant has many delicious wines and delicacies. They are the best at cheap prices. If Senior Immortal doesn't mind, please sit here. This little one will go and get them for Senior Immortal." After saying that, shopkeeper Han quickly invited Shong Cheng to sit at another table. This was also shopkeeper Han's carelessness. Perhaps it was his fate. Xiao Hua did not sit in the middle because he was magnanimous. He did not compete with an aura-refining junior. How could Shong Cheng have that kind of bearing? Not to mention, he had just been forced to stop by Xiao Hua. He had nowhere to put his face. When he heard this, he sneered, "Do you think you can arrange where I sit? How can your ordinary wine and delicacies enter my mouth? You really deserve to die." After saying that, he unexpectedly waved his sleeve and cupped his hands towards Xiao Hua. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, I will take my leave now. We will meet again someday." When Xiao Hua heard Shong Cheng's words, he felt that something was wrong. Seeing Shong Cheng wave his sleeve, he hurriedly stood in front of Xue Xue. But at this moment, Han Jiang's face suddenly turned black. The black strands were like small snakes that rapidly slithered down. Han Jiang only had time to raise his hand. Even his eyes were filled with resentment. Immediately, he bled from his 7 orifices and fell down the stairs. When he looked at Shong Cheng again, it was as if nothing had happened. It was as if he had swatted a fly. He grabbed my Xiaoyao's slender waist and flew up, about to throw her into the air. He tilde just as Shong Cheng and my Xiaoyao's figures flew out of Cold River House, Xiao Hua's cold laughter sounded behind them. "Fellow Daoist Shong. You don't have to leave." What does fellow Daoist Xiao mean? Shong Cheng did not dare to be negligent. He clapped his hands and the magic treasure scarlet blood hook flew out again. "You hurt someone in front of me and you still want to leave?" Xiao Hua glanced at the scarlet blood hook and said coldly, "If I don't kill you, how can I face shopkeeper Han?" "Ah!" Shong Cheng was stunned. He asked in astonishment, Just for that fatty who is worse than a pig or a dog, you want to fight with me? It's not a fight. It's a kill." Xiao Hua coldly released the cloud-suppressing seal. "Shopkeeper Han is your descendant." Shong Cheng suddenly thought of something and his expression changed slightly. "No, today is the first time I've seen shopkeeper Han. Ha 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 tilde since he's not related to you, fellow Daoist Xiao, are you joking?" Shong Cheng laughed loudly. "Although you have some divine abilities, you're only at the early stage of foundation establishment. How could you know the secret technique of the middle stage of foundation establishment? Don't let your emotions affect your decisions just because of a damaged magic treasure. You're too righteous. Although shopkeeper Han is a worldly person, he's still a person. Since you can kill people, you should have the resolve to be killed by others." Xiao Hua was still cold. "I'm not talented, but I want to be the person who kills you. I want to be a person who's too righteous." -8. Chapter 1922. Could it be that fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't have innocent lives on his hands? Shong Cheng sneered. Xiao Hua looked up at the sky. "Of course I do, but I dare to face the heavenly Tao head-on. I dare to guarantee that every one of them is a person I must kill. Of course, this is my own admission. If the heavenly Tao abandons me, someone will naturally kill me. Maybe fellow Daoist Shong is one of them?" "Ha ha ha tilde." Shong Cheng roared with laughter, and then he pointed with his finger and said, "I've seen many hypocrites like you on the Dawnrain continent. It's none other than you've taken a fancy to my storage pouch or my women. If you want them, then feel free to come and take them. Why speak so many hypocritical reasons? Fellow Daoist Shong might be right. I might want to kill you. However, Since you killed shopkeeper Han, aren't you giving me a reason? Xiao Hua didn't hide his intention to kill Shang Cheng. If you want to make a move, then make a move. I can't stand seeing you big sects kill people and set up a memorial arch. Shang Cheng clapped his hands and a dozen or so bird-like pitch-black yellow talismans flew out. Each yellow talisman revealed a strange trajectory and flew towards Xiao Hua from all directions. Although Xiao Hua heard that Shang Cheng was a cultivator of the 10,000 Poisons sect, he felt hatred in his heart. He might not necessarily kill him, but since Shang Cheng killed Han Jiang in front of him, what else could Xiao Hua say? He wanted him to kill Shang Cheng. Why should he be polite? Even if Shang Cheng's words were clear and logical, why would Xiao Hua care about other people's opinions? Seeing the dozen or so yellow talismans flying out, Xiao Hua was very surprised. He said with a smile, "Sure enough, it's the 10,000 Poisons sect. These yellow talismans are a bit strange. They're more than strange. I have a lot of techniques to pull out tendons and peel off skin. You can slowly enjoy them." Seeing that Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry to dodge, a sinister smile appeared on Shang Cheng's face. He made a hand seal again and his two hands seemed to gradually turn pitch black. Hua tilde more than 10 yellow talismans simultaneously exploded. More than 10 jet black balls wrapped around Xiao Hua like drops of ink, then turned into raindrops and rained down on Xiao Hua's face. Out! With a sweep of his divine sense, Xiao Hua knew that this item contained a deadly poison. He hurriedly waved his hands, and 2 strands of true samadhi fire appeared in his hands. Following the urging of Xiao Hua's magic power, it suddenly transformed into a thin wall of fire, protecting him. Sizzle, sizzle tilde the poisonous water hit the wall of fire. It was like rain meeting fire, and it was easily burned away without a trace. True samadhi fire? Seeing this, Shang Cheng couldn't help but be alarmed. The yellow talismans of his secret technique were the best at corroding a cultivator's protective brilliance. No matter if it was the Vajra talisman, Iron Cloak talisman, or even the protective brilliance of a golden core cultivator, they would all have an effect. However, this poisonous water was most afraid of fire attribute magic tools and thunder attribute magic tools. This was also one of the reasons why Shang Cheng wasn't willing to fight with Xiao Hua. True samadhi fire was the essence of fire. Very few cultivators were proficient in it. Even the golden core cultivator of the Thunder Palace, Zhen Yi, only had a rough understanding of it. Shang Cheng never thought that he would be able to see it in the hands of an early Foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, what he saw wasn't just a strand, but a wall of true samadhi fire. Go tilde Shang Cheng hesitated for a moment. However, the seal in his hands had already been formed. Thus, he shouted and spread open his 10 fingers. 2 faint balls of mist emitting a fishy smell formed in the hollow of his palms. He then waved his hand, and the balls of water spiraled out. Moreover, as they flew, the dense water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Han Jiangji was absorbed into the balls of mist, causing them to expand. Ha 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 tilde Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He also waved his hand. He didn't use any true samadhi fire. Instead, a dozen fireball talismans flew out and smashed towards the 2 balls of poisonous water. With a series of rumbling sounds, the fireball talismans exploded. A fist-sized fireball was born and rushed into the balls of poisonous water. However, something happened that surprised Xiao Hua. His fireball talismans, which had always been invincible, actually lost their sound the moment they entered the balls of poisonous water. All of the fireballs were corroded by the poisonous water, rapidly annihilating and disappearing. Damn, as expected, you have some skill. Xiao Hua was all smiles, not nervous in the slightest. He waved his 2 hands again and several sparks flew towards the balls of water again. And at this time, the balls of water had already flown several feet away from Xiao Hua. With a crisp cracking sound, the balls of water actually expanded, about to burst. However, at the instant the water ball exploded, numerous sparks landed on it. It was as though a flame had landed in oil. With a ting sound, the poison water ball was ignited. Immediately, the entire poison water ball rapidly shrunk and finally disappeared. Forget it tilde when Shang Cheng saw this, he secretly sighed in his heart. He knew that his divine ability was restrained by Xiao Hua. Those formless poisonous mist that could normally injure people would probably not be effective today. Shongcheng was resolute. He urged his transcendence energy and the scarlet bloodhook suddenly shrunk, almost becoming 3 inches in size. It crashed towards Xiao Hua's body. At this time, he didn't have any ideas. He only hoped that this magic artifact could touch Xiao Hua, or at least make a cut on Xiao Hua's body. Then, victory would be in his grasp. Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua laughed loudly. You've exhausted your abilities. Just watch this young master's method. While speaking, Xiao Hua clapped his hands. What he took out was actually not the cloud-suppressing seal, but the young leaf fan. Under the urging of Xiao Hua's transcendence energy, a fire dragon was born on the young leaf fan, whistling as it pounced towards the scarlet bloodhook. Young leaf fan? Shongcheng's expression had never been so unsightly. To tell the truth, if it was the cloud-suppressing seal, he really had the strength to fight. In his heart, he wasn't too afraid. He was even thinking just now, Xiao Hua's exquisite true samadhi fire, how could he not have a fire-type magic artifact? And he just happened to have a Buddhist seal. Only now did he understand that it wasn't that Xiao Hua didn't have one, but that he had 2 magic artifacts. That fire-type young leaf fan just didn't reveal itself. Swift Shongcheng's ferocious energy was suddenly born. He suddenly released his pressure, directly pressing it towards Xiao Hua. He vainly attempted to rely on the pressure of a middle foundation establishment stage to suppress Xiao Hua. Moreover, at the same time, a layer of bloody red silk appeared on the scarlet bloodhook, like a branching branch bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, extending towards the air. Xiao Hua's expression didn't change in the slightest. He clapped his hand on his forehead, releasing the same pressure. Even though it was a bit weaker than Shongcheng's pressure, Xiao Hua's figure wasn't immobile like a qi condensation stage cultivator. As expected, it's still the early foundation establishment stage. Sensing Xiao Hua's pressure, Shongcheng's heart couldn't help but feel a burst of calmness. However, just as he was about to urge his pressure again, there was an explosive bang. The flames of the young leaf fan completely wrapped around his scarlet bloodhook. The tongue of flame licked the scarlet bloodhook, and in the blink of an eye, the blood that had just been produced was completely burned away. Damn it, a magic artifact. It really is a magic artifact. Shongcheng almost groaned inwardly. Fight! Shongcheng roared in his heart. He clapped his hand and took out a jade bottle from his storage pouch. He raised his head and poured it into his mouth. Then, he clapped his hand again and took out a blood-red glittering talisman. He slapped it on his body, and with a buzzing sound, Shongcheng's body gradually expanded. Moreover, the skin of his whole body became scarlet. Watch this father's method. Shongcheng grinned maliciously and flew towards Xiao Hua from the air. When he got closer, his unshaven black face became even more ferocious. He clapped his hand and took out a fist-sized pitch-black hammer. He waved it and smashed it towards Xiao Hua. Ah! Demonic artifact. Xiao Hua stood with his hands behind his back, appearing very relaxed. Seeing the familiar appearance in Shongcheng's hand, he couldn't help but sweep it with his divine sense. He almost laughed inwardly, but the pitch-black demonic artifact in his eyes seemed somewhat gloomy. He feared that Shongcheng had done something to this demonic artifact. Hearing the demonic artifact in Shongcheng's hand waving in the air, causing the wind to howl and make strange sounds, Zhongliqiang and the others were all aghast. They all secretly exclaimed, "A foundation establishment cultivator really has incomparable magical abilities. Not only does he have a talisman, he also has a legendary demonic artifact." Could it be that Xiao Hua has been scared silly? Seeing that Xiao Hua was unhurried and didn't seem to have any means to deal with it, Shongcheng was slightly surprised. He didn't think that Xiao Hua had really been scared silly. For a moment, his waving hand actually became somewhat sluggish. Damn it, what's wrong with this father? Feeling the hesitation in his heart, Shongcheng was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly urged his strength to activate the strange talisman. The demonic artifact in his hand carried the sound of wind and smashed towards Xiao Hua's head. It's only SOSO. Xiao Hua calmly waved his hand and took out a demonic hammer that was several times larger than the one in Shongcheng's hand. With a loud bang, the two hammers collided. The sound was so loud that the ears of the mortals near Cold River House were ringing. Most of them swayed and fell to the ground. Shongcheng's mouth was wide open in astonishment. His entire body was sent flying by the demonic hammer. "Don't leave." Xiao Hua's figure moved, following Shongcheng like a shadow. He waved his hand again. Bang, bang, bang. 3 consecutive bangs rang out. The demonic hammer, which was still somewhat difficult to wave during qi refinement, was now like a piece of grass in Xiao Hua's hand. Shongcheng's arm was already sore and numb, and his entire body was temporarily unable to move. Under Xiao Hua's rapid attacks, he actually didn't have any reaction. The 3 hammers all hit his body, but Shongcheng's body emitted a faint blood-red color, forcibly blocking the demonic hammer's enormous power. A protective magic treasure? Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed. "Hehe, you think you're the only one with a magic treasure?" Shongcheng laughed evilly. His hands rubbed together, and a faint black brilliance formed between his palms again. "Forget it, this young master is too lazy to play with you." Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and a drop of spirit fire flew out, directly flying towards Shongcheng's body. "Chimph, it's only the true samadhi fire. This old man wants to see whether or not it can break this old man's magic treasure." Shongcheng's heart was apprehensive, but also somewhat panicked. He really didn't know whether his magic treasure could withstand the true samadhi fire. The magic seal from before hesitated for a moment, then changed again. Several scarlet streaks landed on his body. Xiao Hua urged the divine fire art, and half of the magic power in his body immediately poured into the spirit fire. Following a wave of Xiao Hua's finger, a long, rocket-like streak rushed into Shongcheng's chest. "If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Com to vote for it." -8. Chapter 1923. Without the slightest suspense, the flame went in. Shongcheng screamed miserably, and his hands finally formed a seal. With a muffled peng sound, Shongcheng's corpse suddenly exploded. Countless tiny pieces of flesh flashed with scarlet brilliance and rushed in all directions. Damn it! Xiao Hua's divine sense swept and knew that these pieces of flesh were highly toxic. If they fell into the river or encountered ordinary people, it would be a great disaster. Moreover, what made Xiao Hua the most angry was that Shongcheng actually wrapped his storage bag in the flesh. If Xiao Hua wanted to take the storage bag, he must be poisoned. Therefore, he did not hesitate to form another hand seal. The other half of the magic power in his body surged into it. The drop of spirit fire turned into a fire net and quickly wrapped all the flesh and blood. With a slight curl, it turned into nothingness. At the same time, the spiritual fire also burned the storage bag slightly. Xiao Hua's mind wrapped around the gap of the storage bag, and regardless of the consequences, everything inside was sucked into his own space. Damn it, don't you know that this young master doesn't need to use his hands to take things? Xiao Hua looked at the storage bag being burned to ashes and sneered. Immediately, Xiao Hua swept his divine sense around for a moment, and then said, "Good." He breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, in the Buddha's heart of Xiao Hua's Buddha's Sariya, the burning Buddha's fire added a few more colors out of thin air. This Buddha fire had already reached a certain scale when Xiao Hua was in the foundation establishment stage and used the 5-skandha spiritual awakening formation to transcend the undead. Now, it was burning more and more vigorously. After killing Shongcheng, Xiao Hua did not rush to land. Instead, he quietly stood in midair. While recovering his magic power, he furrowed his brows and pondered. To be honest, Xiao Hua did not expect Shongcheng to be so difficult to kill. Shongcheng actually made him use the spiritual fire twice and exhausted all the magic power in his body. For Shongcheng, who was only in the middle stage of foundation establishment, this was making a big fuss over nothing. However, Xiao Hua didn't want to reveal it too much in front of everyone. This spiritual fire was only because he had the true samadhi fire as a cover. If others saw it, they would treat it as an ordinary flame. Otherwise, Xiao Hua wouldn't reveal his trump card. In fact, the most important thing was that although Xiao Hua now had the spiritual power of the peak foundation establishment stage and even the early gold core stage, he didn't have the corresponding techniques and magical powers to control this spiritual power. Another reason was that Shang Cheng was from the 10,000 Poisons sect. Although it was a small sect, its poison was very powerful and was feared by ordinary cultivators. If the shopkeeper of the Cold River House, Han Jiang, was able to lay down a restrictive spell on the Cold River House, how could he not have any defensive spells on his body? But even so, he was still harmed by Shang Cheng's poison. From this, one could see how powerful the poison of the 10,000 Poisons sect was. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Hua didn't have the true Samadhi fire or the spiritual fire, he wouldn't be afraid of Shang Cheng's poison. However, if he wanted to kill Shang Cheng, it wouldn't be easy for him to not be poisoned. Granny, I still have to look at the techniques of various sect. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua felt a burst of warmth in his heart. Although Xiao Hua didn't have the patience to carefully organize the 4 storage pouches that Xiong gave him, he still roughly looked through them. He originally thought that Xiong would take away the cultivation technique jade slips of the 3 gold core stage seniors from Xuanyan School, Huanhua sect, and Huangdao sect, and bring them back to the Imperial Thunder sect to claim credit for himself. However, what surprised Xiao Hua was that Xiong didn't take a single one of these things. Even if there were a dozen or so jade slips, he didn't know which sect they belonged to. Presumably, they were the techniques of the cultivators from the side sects killed by the Thunder Beast. Xiao Hua understood very well that when these things were put together, they were comparable to the foundation of a small cultivation sect. Xiao Hua himself could even use these cultivation techniques to form a small family or sect. However, Xiong didn't have the slightest intention of keeping them for himself and left them all to Xiao Hua. What he took away was only half of the Thunder Beast's inner core and some other things that Xiong knew were useless to Xiao Hua. Eldest senior brother treated me like this, I will definitely repay eldest senior brother. HMPH, Kui Hongshan, consider yourself lucky. Xiao Hua thought of Xiong and naturally thought of Kui Hongshan. Xiao Hua tilde Xue's somewhat anxious voice sounded. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that Xue couldn't wait for him and flew into the air. Are you alright? Immortal Beauty School's my Xiao Yarrow already ran away. I'm fine, how could I be fine? Xiao Hua waved his hand in an extremely relaxed manner and said, your husband is thinking. As for my Xiao Yarrow, if she ran away, then she ran away. I originally didn't intend to kill her. Xue was surprised. You already killed her, what are you still thinking about? Sigh, killing her is too tiring. Your husband wants to think about how to easily kill her. Xiao Hua winked exaggeratedly. Ha 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 tilde Xue covered her mouth and laughed. She's a middle-stage foundation building cultivator. It's already not bad that you were able to kill her, and you still want to easily kill her. I'll wait for you. Xiao Hua smiled and flew down the Cold River House hand in hand. At this moment, other than the Chong family siblings, there was also a gorgeous beautiful woman and a 10-year-old child in the Cold River House. The two of them were kneeling beside Han Jiang's body that had already turned into a pitch-black mass of blood with sorrowful expressions. Seeing Xiao Hua land, the Chong family's siblings were both afraid and longing. They bowed and saluted him. Senior Xiao, you've worked hard. Thank you, Master Xiao. The beautiful woman knelt on the ground, rushed forward a few steps, and kowtowed as she shouted. The 10-year-old child was even more sensible. He also followed his mother and kowtowed. Thank you, Benefactor Xiao. Sai tilde get up. Xiao Hua looked at the pitiful mother and son and felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. If it wasn't for Shang Cheng's evil deeds, this would be such a harmonious family. With just a wave of Shang Cheng's hand, 2 more sorrowful people appeared in this world. The trajectory of these 2 people's lives had already changed. When the mother and son saw that they couldn't continue kowtowing, they also didn't dare to force themselves to kowtow. However, they still knelt and didn't move, sobbing miserably. That's right, the Cold River House was precisely at the bank of this cold river. Who knows how many people coveted it? Han Jiang had died, and not even his bones remained. What would this orphan and widow do? This lowly concubine Han Jiang's first wife, Lady Liu. This is Han Jiang's only son, Han Yi. After sobbing for a while, Lady Liu raised her head and said to Xiao Hua, Han Jiang has been killed. To be able to receive Master Xiao's righteousness and kill the murderer, this lowly concubine really has nothing to repay. Han Jiang only left this cold river house behind. This lowly concubine is willing to give this cold river house to Master Xiao as a gift of thanks. I only ask that. At this point, Lady Liu didn't dare to say anything else. She looked at Xiao Hua with difficulty, then looked at her own son whose eyes were flashing with anger, unyielding, and reverence. She clenched her teeth and said, I only ask that Master Xiao can extend one more little finger and save Han Yi from the fire and water. Madame Liu didn't talk about herself and only talked about Han Yi. This immediately hit Xiao Hua's weak spot. He naturally knew what Madame Liu was thinking. He inwardly sighed and said, Han Yi, come over here. -8. Chapter 1924. Yes, although Han Yi was in his teens, he was well versed in the matters of the marketplace. He very cleverly knelt and walked a few steps, arriving in front of Xiao Hua. Suddenly, Xiao Hua felt an indescribable discomfort in his heart, but it couldn't be said to be disgust. He originally wanted to see Han Yi's aptitude or constitution to see if he could find a disciple for Xiong. But seeing Han Yi so cleverly, he was afraid it didn't conform to eldest senior brother's honest nature, right? Hey, you actually already started cultivating? Xiao Hua probed Han Yi's meridians with a trace of magic power and immediately asked in astonishment. I'll let you know, Daoist Xiao. Han Yi's eyes were somewhat arrogant. He smiled apologetically and said, my father secretly nurtured me when I was young. It's just that there was no sect on the path of immortality, so no sect accepted me as a disciple. Then where did your first layer of qi refining cultivation come from? Xiao Hua understood that it was impossible for Han Jiang to run such a large cold river house without a bit of reliance or planning. Han Yi said again, it was casually taught by an immortal who passed by the restaurant on a daily basis. Your cultivation method, where did it come from? Xiao Hua asked again. I also don't know. My father gave it to me. As Han Yi spoke, he carefully took out an oilcloth bag from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua opened it to take a look. In an instant, he felt a burst of sadness. Indeed, inside the oilcloth bag were a dozen yellowed pages of paper. On them were scribbled words of various sizes. It was a simple earth-type qi refining cultivation method. He didn't know how Han Jiang obtained it, but clearly, Han Jiang's painstaking care for the child was seen by Xiao Hua. At the same time, he also thought of his own difficulties in finding a cultivation method. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. With a wave of his hand, a flame flashed, and the pages containing the cultivation method turned into ashes. Ah! Han Yi was startled and cried out in a low voice. But immediately, he understood and lowered his head. Liu She was greatly alarmed and cried out, Daoist Xiao, Liu Desao, don't worry. Xue hurriedly reminded in a low voice, this cultivation method doesn't necessarily come from somewhere. If others know about it, it will bring misfortune to the child. Yes, this lowly concubine understands. Madame Liu immediately understood and hurriedly nodded. But then, she remembered that Xue had actually called her sister-in-law, and a look of gratitude appeared in her eyes. It had to be said that Xue had changed a lot after following Xiao Hua. If it were before, she would definitely not be able to call her sister-in-law. However, for her lover, she had changed. She had changed, even her personality. This Xiao originally intended to recommend you to the Imperial Lightning Sect to become a disciple. Unfortunately, your physique is of the Earth attribute, and you don't meet the requirements of my Imperial Lightning Sect. This has made things difficult for this Xiao. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment before speaking. However, his gaze once again swept over the Chong siblings. Seeing Xiao Hua burn Han Yi's cultivation method, Chong Lehao's heart trembled. He understood that Xiao Hua was preparing to give Han Yi a new cultivation method. A cultivation method of the Earth attribute. Even Chong Li Hao himself was envious of it. Now that Xiao Hua's gaze swept over him, he immediately understood what was going on. He took a step forward and bowed. Senior Xiao, the Imperial Lightning Sect is really too far away. It will be difficult for Han Yi and Madame Liu to go there. Since we encountered this matter together with Senior Xiao, and Senior Xiao helped Han Yi to settle the blood debt, then we will help Senior Xiao deal with the aftermath? Great. Xiao Hua saw that Chong Li Hao was so tactful and was also happy. He smiled and said, "Then how about letting Han Yi become a disciple of your Chong clan? Sister-in-law Liu can also go with Han Yi. As for the future, it will be up to you." This junior has the same intention. Chong Li Hao smiled apologetically and said, "Although the Chong clan of Mo Cloud Village isn't big, it shouldn't be a problem to take care of a widow and an orphan. Remember, don't let them be bullied." Xiao Hua reminded him. Then, he smiled and said, "Of course, since they are disciples of the Chong clan, they should be disciplined. Yes, this junior understands." Chong Li Hao smiled and turned to Chong Lamine and said, "Little minute, go around and see if there is anyone who wants to take over this cold river house. As a cultivator, I can't be tied down by these things." "Yes." Chong Lamine nodded and walked away quickly. Xiao Hua looked at Han Jiang's bloodstains on the ground. With a wave of his hand, another flame appeared, burning everything into nothingness. He turned his head and said to Madame Liu, "Don't blame me for being ruthless. This bloodstain is highly toxic, leaving it here will only harm you." "Yes, I will follow Spiritual Master Xiao's decision." Liu Shi saw that her husband's last mark disappeared and her heart was filled with sorrow. "Sister-in-law Liu, you can leave now. Tell them to pack up the things that we are going to take away. Later, I will ask Xiao Minute to send you to Mo Yun village." Chong Li Hao was quite good at commanding. He made a prompt decision and gave his orders. "Yes, this lowly concubine will go now." Liu Shi understood this kind of danger. Naturally, she wanted to take advantage of the time when the other immortals were here to deal with everything. She immediately agreed and went downstairs after looking at Han Yi. "Han Yi, get up. If there is no need, don't kneel in the future." Xiao Hua looked at Liu Shi's back and said, "Yes, this disciple understands." Han Yi immediately got up and stood beside Xiao Hua obediently. Xiao Hua thought for a while, then clapped his hands and took out 2 jade slips, one in each hand. He closed his eyes and immersed his divine sense in them. After a while, he put one of them away and gave the other one to Chong Li Hao. This is a cultivation method of the earth element. It can help you reach the early stage of the foundation building realm. Take it as a reward for Han Yi. Chong Li Hao nodded. Chong Li Hao's heart was beating wildly. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Senior Xiao, to help the late shopkeeper Han is our goodwill." "What you are doing?" However, Chong Li Hao's fervent eyes exposed his thoughts again. "Haha, I will leave now. However, your Chong family will have to teach Han Yi in the future. If there is no reward, I'm afraid you won't be able to explain it to the sec." Xiao Hua said with a faint smile. "Well, since Senior Xiao said so, I won't be unreasonable." Chong Li Hao was generous. He reached out and took the jade slips and kept them properly. Xiao Hua clapped his hands again and took out a small storage bag. He passed it over and said, "There are some spiritual stones and elixirs for qi refinement. Take it as a gift for the Chong family's sect master. If there are any leftovers, give them to Han Yi." Yes. Chong Li Hao was shocked. He wanted to decline, but when he looked at Xiao Hua, he couldn't bring himself to say those words. He had no choice but to accept it. Then, he took out the jade slip of the cultivation method and put it in the storage bag. He said seriously, "Senior Xiao is so righteous, which is rare in the Dawn Rain continent. I will definitely tell Sect Master what you said. Please rest assured, Senior Xiao." "Haha, good." Xiao Hua nodded. He looked at the Han River Pavilion. Everything was still the same except for Han Jiang's life. Xiao Hua sighed and walked to the side of the pavilion. At this time, the round sun was gradually setting in the west. The blood-red sunlight shone on the surface of the Han River. It was like a bloody snake wantonly dancing. It was very bleak. Seeing that Xiao Hua was in a bad mood, Xue Xue didn't dare to go forward. When she was about to take a step forward, she heard Chong Xuemei whispered timidly, "Sister Xue. You are Ling Feiyun's sister from the Mist Mountain?" "Eh? Yes." Xue Xue heard and asked curiously, "Do you know Feiyun?" Yes. Chong Xuemei's face actually blushed as she said in a low voice, 3 years ago, when this little sister went out to train, I passed by the Misty Mountain and saw Feiyun." "Feiyun?" Xue Xue rolled her eyes and understood. She smiled and said, "What did Feiyun say to you?" "He didn't say anything." Chong Xuemei was a bit embarrassed. "I was in a hurry and met Feiyun. We traveled together for a few days. He told me about Sister Xue. I just heard Sister Xue's name and that you are a disciple of the Lightning School. That's why I ask." "Haha, so, fellow Chong is not an outsider." Xue Xue's gaze had scanned Chong Xuemei dozens of times, from inside to outside, from top to bottom. Although Chong Xuemei's skin was a little dark and her eyebrows were a little big, the more one looked at her, the more attractive she was. She was far more refreshing than my Xiaoyaro from the Immortal Beauty sect. "Sister, your cultivation is one level lower than Feiyun. You have to work harder," Xue Xue said with a smile. "Ah, he is already at the 10th level of qi refining?" Chong Xuemei was pleasantly surprised. 3 years ago, he was still at the 9th level of qi refining. Yes. Xue Xue said again, "Feiyun's true bloodline has already awakened. His cultivation will be faster in the future. I'm afraid he is not far away from foundation building." "Well, then I really have to congratulate him." Chong Xuemei gritted her teeth. She was both happy and panicked. While they were talking, Chong Lamine brought a fat man who looked quite rich and respectfully said, "Senior Xiao, this is, no need to tell me. Everything will be decided by your Chong family." Xiao Hua said without turning his head. "Yes." Chong Lamine turned his head and told the situation to Chong Li Hao. Chong Li Hao asked Han Yi while dealing with the matter very quickly. Then, he brought Han Yi and the fat man downstairs and handed over the Cold River house. "Sister, you and Senior Xiao, where are you going?" Chong Xuemei saw that there was no one upstairs and whispered. I came out to experience foundation building. I don't have a fixed place to go," Xue Xue said with a smile. "Oh," Chong Xuemei's face showed envy. "I don't know if I can see the hope of foundation building like you." There will be. Since Feiyun has it, you might as well." Xue Xue was quite fond of Chong Xuemei. After a moment of silence, Chong Xuemei looked at Xiao Hua, then looked at Chong Yulian, and whispered, "I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." -8. Chapter 1925. What is it? Just say it. Xue Xue said straightforwardly. When Chong Xuemei heard this, her courage was boosted. She smiled apologetically and said, "The 5 of us originally wanted to go to Tianmen Mountain's Huang family, but Brother Hao should have to turn back. The 4 of us went to the Huang family, but we didn't get anything. If we all turn back, this trip will be a waste. I wonder if Sister is interested in going to the Huang family?" "Why go to the Huang family?" Xue Xue asked curiously. "Sister, you don't know." Chong Yulian also came over and whispered, "Tianmen Mountain's Huang family is that little cabbage cultivation family. Now that their family has declined, they can only retreat to a corner of Tianmen Mountain. Now, their family has encountered a strange situation. A female member of the family, who is just like a little cabbage, contracted a strange disease and is bedridden. Although she doesn't look strange, she just can't wake up. Sometimes, she will have a strange smile on her face. The head of the Huang family is very anxious. They found many famous doctors, but they couldn't treat her. They felt that it might be related to cultivation, but now that they have declined, they can't even compare to my Mo Cloud village. They can't find a cultivator with profound cultivation, so they used their Huang family's ancestral magic tool as the price to ask a nearby cultivator to treat her. Hey, did you take a fancy to that magic tool?" Xue Xue chuckled. "Yes, sister, you know it's true." Chong Xuemei smiled and said, My Mo Cloud village can't compare to Misty Mountain. Sister and the others can't compare to Feiyun. We don't have that many magic tools for us to use. Sister and brothers want to try our luck and see if we can get that magic tool back. Sister went with Senior Xiao. Although I don't have the confidence to treat her, at least Sister and the others won't be in danger, right? If Sister doesn't have anything urgent, why not go and take a look? Chong Shuemei begged. That's right, Sister. Maybe the Huang family has other stories about Little Cabbage. Chong Yulian also said, this little sister also wants to see what that little cabbage is called and where she grew up. This little sister really admires such an infatuated girl that is hard to come by in this world. Xue Xue may not have listened to Chong Shuemei's words, but Chong Yulian's words aroused Xue Xue's curiosity. Yes, a cultivator actually fell in love with a weak scholar and finally committed suicide for the scholar. This was simply impossible, but it had been passed down by the bank of the cold river for thousands of years. What was the secret behind it? Xue Xue turned around and was just about to ask Xiao Hua for his opinion when she heard Xiao Hua say with a smile, wherever junior sister goes, senior brother will follow. This was exactly what Xue Xue had told Xiao Hua that day. All right. Xue Xue looked at Chong Shuemei and smiled, then sister will accompany you. Okay. Chong Yulian and Chong Shuemei laughed and almost jumped up, completely looking like young girls. Chong Liqiang, who had been standing at the side without moving, also had a smile on his face. Mortal affairs were also complicated. Chong Lihao helped Han Yi hand over the Han River House and actually went for the time of a meal. Fortunately, Xiao Hua looked at the setting sun and didn't feel anxious in his heart. Senior Xiao, this junior has settled the matter. Chong Lihao went up to the 4th floor and bowed. This junior originally planned to take Han Yi and Liu Shi back to Moyun village, but since it was Senior Xiao's request, this junior will go back with Xiao Minitian. Very good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out a large stack of flying talismans and handed it to Chong Lihao, saying, this Xiao will go with your sister to the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain. You all go quickly. Ah! Chong Lihao was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed and said with a smile, if Senior Xiao goes, it will be a piece of cake. Xiao Hua chuckled, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain is a cultivation family. This Xiao is only an early-stage foundation establishment realm cultivator. This Xiao is simply not worthy of their attention. This Xiao is just accompanying junior sister to take a look. Hehe, as long as Senior Xiao can go. Chong Lihao held the storage bag given by Xiao Hua in his hand. All of Han Yi and Liu Shi's things were thrown inside. Thank you, Spiritual Master Xiao. Liu Shi and Han Yi thanked again. We will never forget Spiritual Master Xiao's kindness. Go. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said to Han Yi, cultivate well. If you can succeed in your cultivation, you must also remember today's matter. Do more good deeds that conform to the Tao of Heaven and do more righteous deeds that are beneficial to people. This junior understands. Han Yi bowed and said. Seeing Han Yi's excited appearance, Xiao Hua shook his head in his heart. Understand my ass. If it was so easy to understand, how could there be so many people in the world who pursued benefits? Even if he understood now, when there is temptation tomorrow, he would have already thrown the word righteous to the back of his mind. Soon after, Chong Lihao and Chong Limin took Han Yi and Liu Shi back to Moyun village. Xiao Hua took Xue Xue and Chong Shuemei and flew towards Tianmen Mountain. After traveling from Han Jiangnan for more than 10 days, they arrived at the area of Tianmen Mountain. The scenery around Tianmen Mountain was different from what Xiao Hua had seen before. There were ravines everywhere, countless streams, and all the lands were connected by rivers. Most of the people in the secular world traveled on boats. Among the rippling water, there was a lot of rain. For more than 10 days, there was a lot of rain. It was like a misty rain. Fortunately, Xiao Hua and the others were all cultivators and were not afraid of this rain. This was especially true for Xiao Hua. For the past 10 days, other than flying slowly, he had been chatting with Xue Xue and the Chong sisters. The rest of the time, he had been squinting his eyes and carefully comprehending some golden core cultivator's spells and sword formations. At night, he had put all of his thoughts into comprehending them. Therefore, after 10 days, his body was surrounded by an extremely dim brilliance. Although this brilliance was very weak, it was enough to block out the rain. Senior Marshal Brother Xiao, Tianmen Mountain is not far ahead. Chong Shuamei pointed at the distant mountains and said with a smile. In these 10 days, Chong Shuamei and the others had spent a lot of time with Xiao Hua and gradually understood that this senior Xiao was extremely amiable. He was far from the eccentric temperament they had imagined. Most of the time, he was even easier to talk to than Xue Xue. Therefore, all their fear gradually disappeared. Looking at Xiao Hua's face that was even younger than them, they changed the way they addressed him from Senior Xiao to Senior Marshal Brother Xiao. Xiao Hua did not think much of it. His temperament was simple, and he also liked to be with young people. It did not matter whether they called him senior or not. Ian, we actually flew so far. Xiao Hua rubbed his chin and said, that little cabbage had no reason to meet a weak scholar at night and run for more than 10 days, right? Gij Tilda Chong Yulian said with a smile, I'm afraid that little cabbage from 10,000 years ago didn't live on Tianmen Mountain. At that time, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain was very powerful. It should be on the banks of the cold river. Ian, it should be. Xiao Hua nodded and turned his head to look. Your brother Hao should be back soon, right? Chong Yulian also nodded and said, we flew very slowly and were waiting for them. If we had followed our usual pace, they should have arrived today. -8. Chapter 1926. Then, she flew in front of Xue Xue and hugged Xue Xue's arm. She smiled, actually, Sister Xue and Senior Brother Xiao should go to Mo Cloud Village. The scenery there is much better than here. At least there isn't so much rain and fog. Is there something wrong? Chong Shuemei asked anxiously. No. Xue Xue was about to comfort her when Xiao Hua said, they are back. Senior Brother Xiao saw them with his spiritual sense. Chong Shuemei asked enviously. Yes. Xiao Hua nodded. Sure enough, after 15 minutes, they heard Chong Lihao's surprised voice, Senior Xiao, we really caught up with you. But seeing the shock on Chong Shuemei's face, Chong Lihao was stunned. Sister Shuemei? What's wrong? Ian, no, nothing. Chong Shuemei reacted and shook her head. She knew Chong Lihao and Chong Lemin's flying speed very well. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, they had already flown more than 10 miles. In that case, Xiao Hua's spiritual sense had already exceeded 10 miles. This was definitely not the spiritual sense range of an ordinary cultivator in the early stage of foundation establishment. Although Chong Shuemei admired Xiao Hua for killing Shong Cheng, she also heard Shong Cheng's words and thought that Xiao Hua only did it with the power of a magic treasure. Also, Xiao Hua seemed to have used a lot of effort to kill Shong Cheng, so she didn't think highly of Xiao Hua. But now, there was a clue that made Xiao Hua look up to him. Greetings, Senior Xiao. Chong Lihao and Chong Lemin flew to Xiao Hua and bowed. Ian, how did it go? Seeing how excited Chong Lihao and Chong Lemin were, Xiao Hua naturally knew that their trip was successful. Senior, the master of Mo Cloud Village heard about Senior Xiao's deeds and was moved. A cultivator like Senior Xiao who can help the weak and get rid of the strong is rare in the Dawn Rain continent now. The master admires Senior Xiao a lot and wants to see Senior Xiao face to face. Chong Li Hao said as he clapped his hand and took out a red token. He handed it to Xiao Hua and said, unfortunately, the family head can't easily leave Mo Cloud Village. This is the token of a guest elder of Mo Cloud Village. Senior Xiao, please accept it. When you have the chance in the future, come to Mo Cloud Village for a chat. Get rid of the strong and help the weak. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wasn't this phrase used too much in the pugilistic world? Moreover, Chong Lihao didn't mention Han Yi, but directly talked about the family head's words. Naturally, he was instructed by the family head of the Chong family. At this time, he even took out the guest's token, which was quite unexpected for Xiao Hua. Sigh, no wonder so many cultivators are unwilling to meddle in other people's business. It turns out that the consequences of meddling in other people's business are so complicated. Xiao Hua almost wanted to scratch his head. However, when he looked at Chong Xuemei, who was standing next to Xue Xue, he felt that this female cultivator seemed to have some sort of relationship with Ling Feiyun. Moreover, he and Xue Xue would definitely have to dual cultivate in the future. It could be said that there was some karma between them. Forget it. Xiao Hua sighed inside. He extended his hand and said, "Since your patriarch thinks so highly of me, this Xiao will go to Mo Cloud Village to take a look when I have time." Great. Chong Li Hao was absolutely overjoyed. This was the highest mission given to him by the head of the family, and it was completed so easily. After Xiao Hua took the hope, Chong Li Hao said again, "As for Junior Han Yi and Liu Clan, Senior Xiao doesn't need to worry." Before this junior left, the family head had already appointed a foundation establishment grandpa to guide Han Yi's cultivation. That's right. Xiao Hua secretly curled his lips. That set of martial arts can directly cultivate to the early stage of foundation establishment. If Mo Cloud Village doesn't pay attention to it, then this junior will be blind. That's right. Xiao Hua nodded and said, "You guys have worked hard too." Hihi, it's not hard. Chong Lamine at the side smiled and said, "Senior Xiao's flying talisman is really useful." This junior didn't use much spiritual power. Xiao Hua secretly laughed. This was clearly flattery. If it was a fireball talisman, then it was made by himself. This flying talisman was bought by him casually. It wasn't a high-level item, so it was nothing. But after Xiao Hua finished laughing, his heart was moved. He clapped his hands and took out hundreds of fireball talismans. He handed them to Chong Lamine and said, "You guys have worked hard. This fireball talisman was made by me personally. Take it to protect yourself." Hihi, thank you senior brother Xiao. Without waiting for Chong Lamine to take it, Chong Yulian smiled and said first, "Senior brother Xiao's fire attribute magic is so powerful, and you have one of the thunder and fire attributes of the thunder controlling sect. This fireball talisman must be very powerful." Chong Lamine was still a little disappointed, but after hearing Chong Yulian's words, he immediately understood, and his face showed even more disappointment. "Yulian, how can you neglect Senior Xiao like this?" Chong Li Hao heard, and his face became slightly gloomy as he scolded. "He, brother Hao." Chong Yulian chuckled as if she was gossiping with her brother in Mo Yun village. "I heard from big sister Xue that senior martial brother Xiao is not much older than us. He is much younger than our foundation establishment grandfathers in Mo Yun village. If we call him senior martial brother Xiao, wouldn't he be called old by senior martial brother Xiao? Sister Xue won't be happy." This. Not only was Chong Li Hao speechless, but Xiao Hua also smiled bitterly. He could only wave his hand and said, "Just call him senior brother. It's convenient to go to Tianmen Mountain." "Yes, senior Xiao. Senior brother Xiao." When Chong Li Hao agreed, he was ecstatic. Xiao Hua had stepped into the foundation establishment realm at such a young age, and his strength was comparable to the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Such a person, not to mention the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, even the disciples of small sects were worth making friends with. Moreover, Xiao Hua's temperament was simple and approachable. In the future, not to mention other things, just by casually giving some pointers, they would enjoy a lifetime of enjoyment. How could calling him senior brother be compared to calling him senior brother? "Don't snatch it." Xiao Hua saw Chong Yulian put all the fireball talismans into the storage bag. Her playful look was somewhat similar to Xiao Shenrue's when she held the peacock fantasy in her hands in the early years. He said with a smile, "This thing is made by me. You can have as many as you want." As he spoke, he took out the remaining dozens of talismans and handed them to Chong Li Hao. "Thank you, senior brother Xiao." Chong Li Hao was overjoyed. "Darling Xiao, you know how to make yellow talismans?" Xue Xue didn't know that Xiao Hua had this skill and asked with a smile. Xiao Hua held his chin with his hand and said mysteriously, "This senior brother has many secret skills. Where did you learn them? You can slowly understand them in the future." Xiao Hua's words were very ambiguous. How could Xue Xue not hear it? It was the two's whispers. Now that Xiao Hua suddenly said it, while Xue Xue's face was slightly hot, her heart was sweet. Chong Yulian and the others didn't know. They immediately asked excitedly, Senior Brother Xiao, did you learn how to make yellow talismans in the Imperial Thunder Sect? Your Imperial Thunder Sect is really good, they teach everything. Cough cough tilde Shui charmingly swept a glance at Xiao Hua. Your senior brother Xiao is a genius. He didn't even go to learn the Imperial Thunder School's talisman crafting techniques. I'm afraid he already knew this when he was a loose cultivator back then, right? Ayo, senior brother Xiao was a rogue cultivator? Tell me. Chong Yulian's eyes immediately showed curiosity. Even if Chong Shuamei wanted to maintain a certain image in front of Shui, she couldn't help but look at Xiao Hua curiously. Cough cough tilde it's all the bitterness of the past tilde Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, this method of making fireball talismans, and confinement talismans is really a method that rogue cultivators relied on to survive. If you are interested, this Xiao can teach you. Really? Chong Yulian jumped in the air. She was very happy. Other cultivators treasured their own techniques and hid all kinds of techniques. This Xiao Hua was good. After saying a few words, he wanted to teach them. This was a talisman-making technique. Mo Cloud Village spent who knows how many spirit stones to buy yellow talismans every year. He tilde Xiao Huaxian laughed. He had been a loose cultivator before, so he knew that it wasn't easy to obtain cultivation techniques. However, since he wouldn't be able to use yellow talismans in the future, and these siblings of the Chong family also seemed to be kind, what was wrong with teaching them a little? Of course, what Xiao Hua wanted to teach was their own understanding. He wouldn't teach what the Jinhua Mountain Fu family learned. Xiao Hua took out the small booklet of fireball talismans and icicle talismans and handed it to Shui. Shui understood. She first flipped through it and then handed it to Chong Shuemei. She said with a smile, "This talisman-making technique will trouble little sister Shuemei to write it down. I will learn it with my junior brothers and sisters. If there is anything I don't understand, I will ask senior martial brother Xiao." Chong Shuemei's hands were trembling. 2 yellow talisman-making techniques at once. After she took it, her heart calmed down. She said firmly, "Little sister will be careful. Let's go tilde Tianmen Mountain isn't far. Let's go to the Huang family first." Xiao Hua ordered and flew away first. Yes tilde Chong Li Hao and the others answered and followed behind Xiao Hua in high spirits. Although Tianmen Mountain was already in sight, because the Chong siblings flew very slowly, Xiao Hua and the others still took half a day to reach it. They saw that Tianmen Mountain was on both sides of a big river. It was tall and straight, like an open door. On the side of Tianmen Mountain, several winding rivers surrounded the mountain ridge and finally flowed into the big river. In the middle of the several winding rivers, there were several connected mountains. On these mountains, flowers were splendid, trees were shady, and beautiful pavilions were hidden in the shade. It was like a paradise on earth. Moreover, at this time, it was sunny after the rain. The bright sunlight shone on it, and the raindrops were sparkling. Although there was no magic embellishment, how could the work of the heavens be made of rain? The green is strange, the embroidery is wrong, and the beauty of the bell covers the sky. But with such an outstanding place, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain can't be underestimated. Seeing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be moved. In such a place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed, it was too easy to produce a few talented disciples. Yes tilde only here like water can produce such an infatuated cabbage. Shui's thoughts were obviously different from Xiao Hua's. -8. Chapter 1927. Chong Li Hao looked behind him and whispered, "What a pity. The Huang family of Tianmen Mountain is no longer the legendary Huang family." Yes. Xiao Hua scanned the area with his divine sense. He knew that although there were many restrictions here, the flow of spiritual power in the restrictions was weak. There were many flaws that had not been fixed. It must have been abandoned for a long time. While they were talking, 2 people flew out from the center of the area and scanned the area with their divine senses. The 2 of them flew very fast and arrived in front of Xiao Hua and the others in a moment. The first one was an old man who looked like he was in his 70s and wore yellow clothes. Behind him was another old man. The two of them stopped in the air and their gazes fell on Xiao Hua. The old man in front cupped his hands and said, "I am Huang Tianle, the head of the Huang family from Tianmen Mountain. May I know where you are from?" Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm Xiao Hua. Haha, I'm here to accompany the little brother from Mo Yun village to take a look." Mo Yun village's Chong family? Huang Tianle was stunned. When did the Chong family have a foundation establishment guest? Junior Chong Li Hao greets Senior Huang. Chong Li Hao saw Xiao Hua pushing him forward and quickly bowed. "Well, nephew Chong, please get up." Huang Tianle helped Chong Li Hao up and asked, "Nephew Chong, did you come here for a magic artifact?" "Yes, that's my intention," Chong Li Hao answered awkwardly. "But, from what I know, Mo Yun village doesn't seem to have any special medical skills, right?" Huang Tianle whispered. Chong Li Hao smiled and said, "Of course, Mo Yun village doesn't have any. But senior brother Xiao is here, so we have the courage to come to Tianmen Mountain." "I see." Huang Tianle looked at Xiao Hua and said with a wry smile, "I'll let fellow Daoist Xiao know that this old man's granddaughter has been ill for a long time." This old man had no choice but to do this, but many people came for no reason, but there were very few who could really help. This old man also had no choice but to do this. Hearing this, Chong Li Hao's face became even redder. Didn't he come here to try his luck? Fortunately, he met Xiao Hua this time. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to enter Tianmen Mountain. Xiao Hua nodded. "I can understand fellow Daoist Huang's feelings, but since I've come here, I'll just take a look. If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have dared to speak." "Well, I'm not talking about fellow Daoist Xiao. My Tianmen Mountain welcomes a cultivator like fellow Daoist Xiao." Huang Tianle squeezed out a smile on his face. "If it weren't for some family matters, we would definitely hold a banquet to welcome you. Under the heavenly Tao, there will always be changes. Fellow Daoist Huang's state of mind, I'm afraid." Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. Huang Tianle was shocked. Shock appeared on his face. He looked Xiao Hua up and down, bowed and said, "Many thanks for fellow Daoist Xiao's reminder. Fellow Daoist Xiao really is a guest elder of Mo Cloud Village. Ha ha ha." Xiao Hua took out Mo Cloud Village's token and said with a smile, "I'm senior martial brother Li Hao and the others. Fellow Daoist Huang doesn't need to doubt me." Looking at Mo Cloud Village's token in Xiao Hua's hand, Huang Tianle was skeptical. However, since Xiao Hua didn't say anything, Huang Tianle couldn't ask any more. He could only smile apologetically and say, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, this is my Tianmen Mountain's housekeeper. He's also my younger brother, Huang Tianming. Let him accompany fellow Daoist Xiao and take a look around Tianmen Mountain first. Right now, there are too many noisy people in Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Someone like fellow Daoist should go later." Well said. Xiao Hua knew that there were definitely other foundation establishment cultivators in the Huang family. Huang Tianle couldn't possibly accompany him here. Instead of going to Vermilion Bird Palace Hall right now, he might as well take a look around here. "Excuse me." Huang Tianle cupped his hands and flew away. The other old man came forward and smiled apologetically. "I'm Huang Tianming. Greetings to fellow Daoist Xiao." "I don't dare." Xiao Hua promptly returned the greeting. "I'll have to trouble fellow Daoist Huang. He. Fellow Daoist Xiao coming to my Tianmen Mountain is already giving my Huang family face. Being able to bring fellow Daoist Xiao around Tianmen Mountain is also my honor. Please." Huang Tianming said with a smile, but there was clearly some worry in his eyes. "How about this, fellow Daoist Huang? Since I'm here, why don't you bring me around Tianmen Mountain and let my junior brother and the others take a look? Tell them about the symptoms of your sect's female cultivator." Although Xiao Hua wasn't sure if he could cure her, he could at least comfort her. Thus, he said this in embarrassment. "All right." Huang Tianming sighed and said, "I can see that fellow Daoist Xiao is considerate. You're not like other cultivators. As soon as you see the master of my sect, you don't ask about Xiong'er's illness, but first ask about the quality of the magic tool. Truly." Cough cough. Xiao Hua was also a bit embarrassed. He felt like he was being forced to do something beyond his ability. How could Huang Tianming know what Xiao Hua was thinking? He explained the whole sequence of events to Xiao Hua in detail, hoping that Xiao Hua would have some way to reverse the situation. It turned out that for some unknown reason, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain began to wither away since 10,000 years ago. Each generation was worse than the previous one. Originally, the master of the Huang family was a gold core cultivator, but it had declined until today. The master of the Huang family was only at the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, and his other aspects were even worse. The heirs of Tianmen Mountain were also mediocre, and the number of heirs from the branches had also decreased. In this generation, they finally managed to produce a female cultivator from the direct line with great difficulty. Her name was Huang Zixiang. This Huang Mengxiang had been intelligent since she was young. Although the Huang family had declined, their foundation was still there. Since they produced such a genius, they naturally nurtured her with all their might. That was why Huang Mengxiang was able to cultivate to the 9th layer of the aura refining realm before the age of 20. Moreover, based on her cultivation progress, she would probably be able to break through to the 10th layer of the aura refining realm within 3 years. However, last spring, when Huang Mengxiang was preparing to break through to the 10th layer of the aura refining realm, something went wrong. She unexpectedly fainted in the quiet room she was cultivating in. Huang Tianle checked her meridians and other places, but they were all normal and there were no abnormalities. Afterwards, Huang Tianle used the power of the entire Huang family, but he was unable to find the reason for her fainting. As a result, Huang Tianle had no choice but to issue a magic tool as a reward. Hearing this, Xiao Hua frowned and said, "Fellow Daoist Huang, in fact, with the foundation of the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain, they could just casually find a gold core cultivator from a large sect like the Xuanyan school or the Chiqiao school. Even if it wasn't a large sect, wouldn't they be able to find a gold core cultivator from a cultivation sect like the Huang Dao sect or the Five Elements sect? With their remarkable abilities, they might be able to cure her. It's better than issuing a reward like this." Ari, Huang Tianming sighed and said with a bitter smile, "This is the cycle of the heavenly Dao, karma. My Huang family of Tianmen Mountain was really too prominent tens of thousands of years ago. Although we couldn't compare to those large cultivation sects, we didn't put them in our eyes and offended many of them. Now that my Huang family has declined, how could they possibly put us in their eyes? As long as they don't hit us while we're down, that's good enough. Who would want to help us again? Moreover, if a gold core cultivator were to take action, the price isn't something my Huang family can bear. Now, the Huang family is different from before. We can only have. Now, only this Tianmen Mountain can provide for the reproduction of our descendants. We can't just hand it over to others." -8. Chapter 1928. Oh, I understand. Xiao Hua naturally knew the pain of having no money and could only smile apologetically. But after thinking for a moment, he asked, "Since so many cultivators have come, do you have any clues?" "What clues?" Huang Tianming said somewhat irritably. "Every one of them has their own reasons, but none of them can wake Xiong up. Moreover, Xiong is still a virgin, how can she be casually played around with? There is no reason. Ari, if that's the case, then I don't have any confidence." Xiao Hua said calmly, looking at the situation, "I don't need to go to the Huang family's Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. It's better to return early." "Hihi," as fellow Xiao said, "you are a guest from afar. Although my Huang family has declined, we still welcome open and honest cultivators like fellow Xiao. Today is the last day of my Huang family welcoming guests. From tomorrow onwards, Xiong'er's illness will be left to fate. We have worked hard for her for more than a year, so it can be considered that we have not let her down," Huang Tianming said with a smile. "Moreover, our family head has also arranged a banquet tonight. Whether or not Xiong'er is cured, we can't treat you poorly. Actually, to be honest, fellow Xiao doesn't make a difference. Why don't you go and join in the fun? Fine Tilda, I'll nag you once." Xiao Hua heard Huang Tianming's helpless tone and could only nod. "Senior Huang, this junior has a question to ask. Shue Shue was done admiring the scenery. After looking around for a long time, she finally opened her mouth to ask. Oh, this is my junior sister, Shue Shue. Xiao Hua smiled and held Shue Shue's hand. Seeing Xiao Hua and Shue Shue being so intimate, how could Huang Tianming not know? He quickly smiled and said, what does fellow Shue want to ask? There is no harm in asking. Junior wants to ask. Shue Shue hesitated for a moment and said, Little Cabbage, is she from Tianmen Mountains Huang family? What is her name? Does she have? Without waiting for Shue Shue to finish, Huang Tianming's expression suddenly changed and he interrupted, this is just a rumor, how can you believe it? Fellow Daoist Shue, you actually came to our Heavenly Gate Mountain to ask about the origin of a river fish. This is really blasphemous to our Huang clan. Shue Shue tilde hearing Huang Tianming's words, Xiao Hua knew that Shue Shue was definitely not the first person to ask. Just as Huang Tianming said, if you take a river fish and ask if it was transformed from the Huang family's ancestor, isn't that blasphemy? It would be strange if Huang Tianming wasn't angry. Yes, senior brother. Shue Shue knew that it was inappropriate and hurriedly bowed and said, this junior was curious and caused senior Huang to misunderstand. Fimpich tilde Huang Tianming flicked his sleeves, looked at the sky, and said, it's getting late. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please. His tone was no longer as affectionate and familiar as before. Xiao Hua forced a smile and raised his hand. Fellow Daoist Huang, please. Qiong Yulian and Qiong Xuemei, who were behind Shue Shue, slightly pouted and gently stuck out their tongues. They rejoiced that it was Shue Shue who asked. If it was them, they would have been expelled from the Heavenly Gate Mountain. At this time, it was dusk. The sky around the Heavenly Gate Mountain was filled with the glow of the setting sun. In the gradually darkening sky, countless dark clouds were slowly forming. Within the dark clouds, faint blue lightning was gradually forming. The Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was built in the central region of the Heavenly Gate Mountain. It was a land surrounded by several streams. It was vermilion red and was very dazzling in the midst of the emerald green. It was like a ball of fire, and with a single glance, one could tell that the Huang clan of the Heavenly Gate Mountain had an extraordinary origin. Huang Tianming led Xiao Hua and the others until they were a few dozen feet away from the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Then, he descended and stopped outside the vermilion red walls. He called over a Huang family disciple who was guarding the entrance and said to Xiao Hua, fellow Daoist Xiao, please, I still have other trivial matters to attend to. If I may be so bold, I can't accompany you. Xiao Hua forced a smile and could only cup his hands. Fellow Daoist Huang, please do your own things. I will bid farewell to your clan head and will leave in a while. Ien, there is no need for that. The banquet will begin in a while. It is also good for fellow Daoist Xiao to get to know a few more fellow Daoist. Huang Tianming cupped his hands and politely turned around to leave. Senior Xiao, please. The Huang clan disciple respectfully bowed and said, En. Xiao Hua looked at Huang Tianming's back and knew that Shue Shue's words had offended him. But, why is he so wary of Little Cabbage? No matter what, it was something that happened 10,000 years ago. Is there a need to be like this? Xiao Hua thought and followed the disciple into the courtyard. The courtyard was 100 feet wide and there was some strange rockery inside. There were also some rare tree species and a few spirit beasts. It was quite the style of a great clan. When Xiao Hua entered the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The interior of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was a sea of vermilion red. The ground was covered in dilapidated scarlet lava. The four walls of the palace hall were engraved with countless runes. There were also too many paintings. The paintings were either scenes of ancient times, scenes of cultivators fighting, or scenes of hundreds of beasts fighting. The runes on the walls were like tadpoles that converged towards the top of the palace hall. As Xiao Hua moved his gaze upwards, he saw that the tens of thousands of runes had actually converged into a picture of a vermilion bird. Oh my tilde Xiao Hua was inwardly astonished. The Huang clan of Heavenly Gate Mountain probably has the bloodline of the vermilion bird true spirit. This extravagance isn't inferior to an ordinary cultivation sect. But looking at this Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, it is just as Huang Tianming said. It should be coveted by other cultivation sects. I really can't accept their kindness so easily. Senior Xiao, this way please. Seeing Xiao Hua's footsteps slightly stagnate, the Huang clan disciple's heart also rose with pride. However, his face was still respectful as he raised his hand and indicated for Xiao Hua to sit inside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. After Xiao Hua finished looking at the layout of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, he once again looked at the entire hall. He shockingly discovered that within the enormous Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, there were already dozens of white jade tables placed there. Around each table, there were a few cultivators sitting. These cultivators were either foundation establishment or qi refinement cultivators. However, qi refinement cultivators were still the majority. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please. In the depths of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, Huang Tianle sat at the head seat. Near him, there were a few early-stage foundation establishment cultivators accompanying him. When he saw Xiao Hua enter, he pointed to a place on his left that was slightly closer to him. Hearing Huang Tianle's greeting, all the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall looked towards Xiao Hua. Dozens of divine senses also swept over. Their gazes were not without vigilance. The slightly noisy Vermilion Bird Palace Hall also became cold and silent. Xiao Hua looked at the place Huang Tianle pointed to. He didn't show off too much, he just cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks, Huang clan head. This little one's cultivation is insufficient, it's better for me to casually sit. This is Mo Cloud Stronghold's guest cultivator, his name is Xiao Hua." Huang Tianle smiled and introduced him to the early-stage foundation establishment cultivators next to him. He really is young and promising. When everyone heard this, they all withdrew their divine senses and said uninterestedly, "Mo Cloud Stronghold actually also has a foundation establishment guest cultivator, it's not easy." Xiao Hua knew that these foundation building cultivators were hostile towards him, and he wasn't interested in whatever magic tool they were looking for. He looked around and saw that there were a few empty spots at the end of the table where the foundation building cultivators were seated. He then walked over to them. When everyone saw that Xiao Hua was very tactful, they became even more enraptured. Once again talking about the previous topic, the atmosphere in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall slowly became lively again. Huang Tianle also retracted his attention and dealt with the nearby cultivators. When Xiao Hua sat down, Shui and the others also sat around Xiao Hua. Qiong Li Hao and the others also sat very upright. They were the representatives of Mo Cloud Stronghold, they couldn't lose face for the people of Mo Cloud Stronghold. So its fellow Daoist Xiao Tilda, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator sitting above Xiao Hua, cupped his hands and said, "I wonder when fellow Daoist Xiao became a guest cultivator of Mo Cloud Stronghold?" Xiao Hua raised his head and looked at the stout-looking cultivator. He smiled and said, "What is fellow Daoist's name? Which sect do you belong to?" "I am a guest cultivator of Luanshi's Ma clan, my name is Moon Moat," the cultivator said with a bit of pride. "Luanshi's Ma clan?" Xiao Hua slightly frowned. He seemed to have some recollection. After thinking for a moment, he immediately understood. When he entered Imperial Thunder Sect, there seemed to be an aura-refining disciple named Ma Miaoming who seemed to be from some Luanshi's Ma clan. However, after so many years, Xiao Hua basically forgot. Seeing that Xiao Hua's face didn't have the respect he expected, Moon Moat unhappily asked, "So? Could it be that the guest cultivator of Mo Cloud Stronghold has never heard of Luanshi's Ma clan?" Moon Moat. Xiao Hua smiled inwardly for no reason. This name was indeed similar to Moon Moat. However, looking at Moon Moat's serious appearance, he smiled apologetically and said, "Fellow Daoist Moon Moat knows that this Xiao is ignorant and inexperienced. I was just invited as a guest cultivator by Mo Cloud Stronghold and my head was filled with happiness. I'm still not too familiar with the situation in the country of Shi. I've made fellow Daoist Moon Moat laugh." "The country of Shi?" Moon Moat stared blankly. His face contained a faint sneer as he said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, could it be that you haven't been to the country of Lian and the country of Meng?" "Ayo, I'm really ashamed." It's exactly as fellow Daoist said. This time, This one brought the little junior brothers of Mo Cloud Stronghold to work because I wanted to travel more. Xiao Hua's face was filled with fear, as if someone had seen through his thoughts. Seeing such a short-sighted fellow Daoist, Moon Moat's eyes unconsciously revealed pride. He pointed his finger and said, "Could it be? Fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't even know the fellow Taoists sitting above?" Xiao Hua's gaze swept over. Indeed, he really didn't know any of them. He could only smile bitterly and said, "This one really doesn't know any of them. Fellow Daoist Moon Moat, please teach me." No problem." Moon Moat stroked the sparse beard on his chin and said like a teacher, "Look at the cultivator on the left of fellow Daoist Huang. That lean and tall one is our country of Shi's famous sect, Flowing Light Sect Su Mingyu. This person is skilled in water magic. Then look at the one on fellow Daoist Huang's right. The one with a sallow face is also an extraordinary cultivator. He is fellow Daoist Xie Yujiang's fellow Daoist Xie Yujiang. Counting down from fellow Daoist Su Mingyu, there are fellow Daoist Chang Sikhang of River Jade Sect, fellow Daoist Zhu Feng of Qiming Sect, fellow Daoist Lanping of Mulan Mountain. These are all from big sects. Looking at fellow Daoist Xie Yujiang, fellow Daoist Qiming of Chu River Sect, fellow Daoist Zhu Huafeng of Shuiyu Mountain, fellow Daoist Li Mingzhu of Shuiyu Mountain. Soon after, he pointed to the cultivators behind him and said with a smile, "Behind them are the cultivators or guests of aristocratic families like yours and mine. The most famous ones are, of course, Tushan's Chu clan's Chu Yuchang, Yun Haozia's Yun Mo, Ming Feng's Zhong Wuxing, Yi Piu's Jing clan's Jing Lili and Xuanwei's Zhao clan's Zhao Fanling. As for the others, they're just general names. There's no need for this old man to talk about them." -8. Chapter 1929. Then, Yu Chuan waved his hand again and said, "The people from the other families are all nameless. I'm afraid I don't know either. I presume fellow Xiao doesn't have any interest in knowing." That's true. Xiao Hua followed Yu Chuan's finger and looked at the many cultivators with different appearances. He felt it was very novel. This kind of gathering of foundation establishment cultivators, to be honest, was his first time. Thinking that he would encounter many such things in the future, he listened very carefully. When Yu Chuan waved his hand, Xiao Hua immediately knew that Yu Chuan was talking about all Qi refinement cultivators, not foundation establishment cultivators. When Qiong Li Hao and the others heard this, their faces turned slightly red. If it wasn't for Xiao Hua, they would be nameless as Yu Chuan said. But even so, Mo Cloud Village was really nameless in the country of Shi. It couldn't even compare to Misty Mountain. In this kind of occasion, it could only be nameless. "Oh right, fellow Yu," Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "I was also sent out by the family head at the last minute. There are many things I don't know. Let me tell fellow Yu something. This is my first time representing Mo Cloud Village. I just came to see and have no plans. So I want to ask fellow Daoist, what magic tool did Tianmen Mountain's Huang family take out? How did it attract the experts of a cultivation sect like Lumen sect?" Then he looked around. And so many people from cultivation families came. It's really out of my expectations. Is that so? Yu Chuan glanced at Xiao Hua with a "you want to deceive me? You want to pry for information?" expression and said with a smile, "Since fellow Daoist Xiao can come, how can you not have such thoughts? A handy magic tool for you and me is like adding wings to a tiger." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and said, "There are many experts in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. I know my limits. Forget it. If fellow Yu doesn't want to say it, then don't say it. Fellow Daoist Huang will say it in a while." Fellow Daoist Xiao is wrong. Yu Chuan saw that Xiao Hua didn't ask anymore and lost interest. He chuckled and said, "This kind of thing, everyone knows it in their hearts. How can fellow Daoist Huang say it on the spot? First, he will lose face. Second, it will embarrass the fellow who got the magic tool. No matter what, Daoist Yu still knows." Xiao Hua was bored, so he casually told Yu Chuan, "That's natural. This Yu has met the Huang family's housekeeper, Huang Tianming. When I came here the other day, I heard him vaguely reveal some information. Yu Qian said proudly. Please teach me, fellow Daoist Yu. Xiao Hua's face was filled with longing. Yu Qian transmitted his voice. This matter is rather secretive. I'll only tell fellow Daoist Xiao alone. Don't spread it out. Don't worry, this Xiao only knows fellow Daoist Yu in this hall. Who do you want this Xiao to tell? Xiao Hua smiled embarrassedly. Oh well, who asked I to be fated with Daoist Xiao? Yu Qian smiled and said, I wonder if Daoist Xiao knows about the glory of Qianmen Mountain's Huang family. Oh! Xiao Hua was stunned. He thought for a moment and could only smile bitterly. I really don't know. I've made a fool of myself in front of fellow Daoist Yu. You don't even know this? Yu Qian said in astonishment. But looking at Xiao Hua's expression that didn't seem to be fake, he shook his head. Young man, you need to add more knowledge about Xiaoyu continent's cultivation. Don't just put your energy into cultivation. Yes, this one understands. Xiao Hua nodded his head very sincerely. He also read a lot of books in Imperial Thunder Sect. But there were very few records about aristocratic families and the like. These things could only be obtained by traveling on one's own. Do you know about spirit stones? Yu Qian suddenly asked. Spirit stones? Xiao Hua was startled. This one naturally knows. No matter what, this one is still a foundation establishment cultivator. How could I not know about spirit stones? Hihi, then fellow Daoist Xiao, have you ever thought about where spirit stones come from? Yu Qian looked at Xiao Hua with a playful smile, as if he was looking at a country bumpkin. This. Xiao Hua suddenly felt that what he knew was really too little. But some memories entered Xiao Hua's mind. Spirit stone mine. Xiao Hua blurted out. Yu Qian's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. Soon after, he nodded and said, speaking of spirit stone mine, even if this one doesn't say anything, fellow Daoist Xiao will definitely remember something. This one understands. Xiao Hua's heart surged with endless waves. That's right, why have I never thought about the origin of spirit stones? These spirit stones were naturally harvested from underground spirit stone veins. Naturally, there were also spirit stone veins on the Daybreak continent, which would inevitably be controlled by the big cultivation sects. Perhaps, the Imperial Thunder sect had their own spirit stone veins. And Qianmen Mountain's Huang clan was so arrogant before. They didn't put cultivation sects in their eyes. What else could they rely on? Isn't it just a spirit stone mine? Just as fellow Daoist Xiao thought, several tens of thousands of years ago, when Qianmen Mountain's Huang clan was at their peak, they controlled this fire spirit stone mine. They were very rich. Yu Qian said with a sinister smile, this kind of rich clan, you say, even if they have declined, how can the magic tools that Huang Tianle took out for his own granddaughter be inferior? This one understands. Xiao Hua was silent. Even if the quality is not good, it has already flowed out of the Huang clan these past few years. To be able to stay in the Huang clan's hands, it must be a good quality magic tool. Who knows, it might even be comparable to a low-grade magic tool. Indeed. Yu Qian nodded, listening to Huang Tianming's words, and Yu Qian still wanted to say it. But at this moment, Huang Tianming stood up, coughed twice, and said clearly, fellow Taoists, this one has been somewhat slow these past few days. Here, this one apologizes to everyone. As he spoke, he cupped his hands towards everyone. Hihi, fellow Daoist Huang is too courteous. Next to Huang Tianle, Limitless Sect's Su Mingyu said with a smile, in these past few days, this one has been eating and sleeping in the Huang clan. Even my cultivation has improved. If it's an apology, this one has to apologize first. Ha 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 tilde fellow Daoist Su is right. On the other side, Chu River Sect's Chiming also said with a smile, we haven't even done anything yet, and we've already received such hospitality from fellow Daoist Huang. What can we complain about? Everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall chimed in. Hihi, this is all due to fellow Taoists giving this one face. Huang Tianle still said with a deadpan expression, how can this one not know? However, in the past year that my granddaughter has been ill, many capable people and crafty people have come, but no one has been able to cure Xiong-er's illness. This old man's mood is also extremely bad. Therefore, this old man made up his mind a month ago. This time, I've invited all the experts I know in the country of Xi. If any fellow Daoist is able to cure Xiong-er's illness, then that person will be the benefactor of my Huang clan, and also Xiong-er's good fortune. If no fellow Daoist can see the clues, this one still has to thank fellow Daoists for coming all the way here and placing great importance on my Huang clan's matters. This is also Xiong-er's fate, and this one does not dare to force it. -8. Chapter 1930. Hihi, there are many capable people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Moreover, your granddaughter's fortune is profound. She will definitely have the ending that fellow Daoist Huang hopes for. Li Mingzhu of Shueyu Mountain spoke with a voice like an oriole. Many thanks for fellow Daoist Li's good intentions. Huang Tianle smiled and waved his hand. The jade cup on the table flew up and Huang Tianle easily caught it. He raised it forward and said, "Come, I, Huang Tianle, represent the Huang clan of Tianmen Mountain to toast everyone with a cup of spirit wine. Many thanks, fellow Daoist Huang." Everyone stood up and raised their cups with a smile. Of course, Xiao Hua also stood up and frowned as he looked at the sparkling clear wine in the cup. He didn't like spirit wine, and when he saw Huang Tianle's smile, it was clearly filled with bitterness. Under these circumstances, no matter how delicious the spirit wine was, Xiao Hua didn't have the heart to drink it. Thus, he waved his hand and sent the wine cup into the space. Fortunately, everyone was savoring the taste of the Huang family's spirit wine, so no one paid attention to Xiao Hua. Otherwise, this kind of situation where the wine cup disappeared after tasting the wine would be laughable. After everyone finished drinking, Huang Tianle pointed his finger again and a wisp of dark green spirit wine poured into the wine cup from the jug. Everyone, my Tianmen Mountain hasn't been so lively for a long time. Alas, unfortunately, it's not a happy occasion. However, since everyone came to my Huang clan, you are still my Huang clan's friends. In the future, if you need my Huang clan's help, please send a message. Come, for the sake of giving my Huang clan face, I thank everyone. While speaking, everyone drank the second cup in one gulp. Fellow Daoist Huang Tilda Chu family's Chu Yuchang smiled and said, "The spirit wine of the Huang clan is indeed delicious. Within the coldness, there is a trace of heat. It's something that our families can't compare to." Chu Yuchang is also very willing to drink a few more cups. However, if fellow Daoist Huang toasts left and right like this, I'm afraid Chu will be drunk in a while and won't have the chance to treat your granddaughter. Hehe, fellow Daoist Chu is joking. A bitter smile appeared on Huang Tianle's face. I already knew fellow Daoist Crooked Soul's alcohol tolerance, so how could he have gotten drunk? Come, let this Huang propose a third toast to fellow Daoists. I beg the heavens to protect our cultivation families. Don't let the disciples of other families, and the disciples of other sects, encounter such strange things again. Well, since Huang Tianle had said so, no one could not help but raise their glasses. Moreover, everyone could see that Huang Tianle was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Ha ha ha, tilde fellow Daoist Huang is indeed in a good mood. You're still in the mood to drink wine with such a big family matter. A slightly hoarse voice rang out. It actually came from outside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Hey! Which fellow Daoist? Huang Tianle exclaimed in surprise. However, when he saw the short, fat, and pockmarked middle foundation establishment cultivator enter, his expression changed. What? Fellow Daoist Huang, do you not welcome me? The foundation establishment cultivator was wearing a suit of armor. Behind him, there were two other cultivators wearing the same suit of armor. Surprisingly, they were also early-stage foundation establishment cultivators. So it's fellow Daoist Shong Qinghe from Haoming City. I wonder if fellow Daoist Shong has come by himself or on behalf of Haoming City? Huang Tianle asked with an indescribable smile as he held the wine cup in his hand, unable to drink any more. He stared at the cultivator's footsteps and asked, "Is there a difference?" Shong Qinghe did not directly answer. Instead, he walked to the front of the hall and swept his gaze across the hall. Finally, his gaze landed on a cultivation family's table not far from Huang Tianle's. He stared at the foundation establishment cultivator from that family and walked straight over. Under his gaze, a trace of fear flashed through the foundation establishment cultivator's eyes. He slowly stood up as Shang Qinghe walked. "Fellow Daoist, you don't mind if I sit in your seat, do you?" Shang Qinghe said coldly. "This." Just as the foundation establishment cultivator hesitated, the two early-stage foundation establishment cultivators behind Shang Qinghe took a step forward with a whoosh. There was no pressure, and the two of them didn't even look at the cultivator. However, the two cultivators exuded a murderous aura and a bloody aura. As a result, the cultivator trembled and involuntarily took half a step back. However, as soon as he took a step back, he came to his senses. Even so, he couldn't move forward even if he wanted to. "Fellow Daoist Liu Fan. Please sit here." Huang Tianle quickly smiled and pointed at a seat closer to him. That seat was occupied by a foundation establishment cultivator and two aura-refining disciples, so there was still room for them to sit next to the table. No need. Liu Fan's expression changed a few times. He was truly embarrassed. He swung his sleeves and turned to leave. The several aura-refining disciples beside him also stood up in a hurry and wanted to leave. "Liu family from Chanxi. What's wrong? Fellow Daoist Liu, do you have a problem with my arrival? Or, do you have a problem with me taking your seat?" Shang Qinghe didn't sit down but said coldly to Liu Fan. "What? Fellow Daoist Shang, this is Tianmen Mountain, not Haoming City. I don't need to tell you, the captain of the city guards, what do I want to do?" Although Liu Fan was timid, he couldn't help but retort. "Haha, of course I can only manage the order of Haoming City. The order of Tianmen Mountain definitely doesn't need me." Shang Qinghe laughed. "However, you want to leave as soon as I arrive. Isn't that not giving me face?" Liu Fan gritted his teeth and looked at the people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. These people had different expressions in their eyes. Some were pitiful, some were lucky, and some were mocking. I suddenly remembered, there's still an important thing I haven't done. Liu Fan cupped his hands and smiled at Huang Tianle. "Therefore, I have to leave first. Fellow Taoists." But just as Liu Fan turned around and cupped his hands to gesture to the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, a cold light flashed in Shang Qinghe's eyes. He winked at the two city guards beside him. The cultivator on the left rubbed his hands, and a series of confinement spells were thrown at Liu Fan. "What are you doing?" Liu Fan certainly paid attention to the movements of Shang Qinghe and the other two. Seeing that the opponent actually launched a sneak attack, he was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hands and wanted to cast a spell. However, just as he activated his dharmic powers, the cultivator to the right of Shang Qinghe slapped his hand, and a silver saber that was 3 feet long appeared in his hand. He swung it, and there was a flash of light on the saber that was half a foot long as it sliced through Liu Fan's neck. Poor Liu Fan. He was already trembling with fear. Seeing that someone had launched a sneak attack on him, he hurriedly counterattacked. But he didn't expect that the second city guard would actually kill him. Moreover, these two city guards cooperated well. Even Xiao Hua in the distance was surprised, so how could he dodge? With a pu sound, a mouthful of hot blood spurted out from Liu Fan's decapitated neck and sprayed out over 2 feet for no reason. His head, which had died with his eyes wide open, also fell onto the crimson-red ground of the Vermilion Bird Palace. "Fellow Daoist Shang, what are you doing?" Huang Tianle was furious. He jumped out and asked, "Fellow Daoist Liu Fan is an honored guest invited by my Tianmen Mountain. How can you casually kill him in front of me?" Two idiots. Shang Qinghe ignored Huang Tianle and swung his hands. With 2 crisp pa-pa sounds, he slapped the faces of the 2 early-stage foundation establishment city guards. "Who told you to attack? Didn't you see that the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall is filled with early-stage foundation establishment cultivators and chi refinement cultivators? Who can pose a threat to me? Your actions make me have to explain myself to fellow Daoist Huang? Yes, we know our mistake. The two city guards' expressions didn't change at all. They turned to Huang Tianle and said, "Fellow Daoist Huang, we were eager to protect our master. We acted hastily and caused trouble. We will take responsibility for this matter. If fellow Daoist Huang wants to punish us, we are willing to accept our punishment." When Huang Tianle saw this, he was so angry that his whole body trembled. However, how could he punish these two city guards? Even if they killed people in Tianmen Mountain, he didn't have the right to kill the two city guards. Even if he could kill the two city guards, the mastermind wasn't these two people. He had offended Haoming City for no reason. Fellow Taoists, you are so reckless. You are really letting down the city guards. Although I don't have the right to punish you, but please give me your tokens. I will go to Haoming City in the future to see Daoist Master Yarrow Hong and ask him to uphold justice. Huang Tianle said helplessly. The two city guards said in unison, "We can leave our lives behind, but we can't leave our tokens behind. Please forgive us, fellow Daoist Huang." Fellow Daoist Huang, the tokens of the city guards of Haoming City are proof of identity. If you take the tokens and do something evil, how can I explain it to the city lord? Shang Qinghe said coldly, "I can let you punish these two city guards, but I can't give you my tokens." Huang Tianle thought for a moment and sighed, "Forget it. Fellow Taoists are witnesses to this matter. I am not afraid that Haoming City will deny it. Alas, the Liu family of Chanshi will wait for this matter. I will personally go and explain it to them." Then, Huang Tianle waved his sleeves and returned to his seat. Several disciples of the Huang family came up and cleaned up Liu Fan's corpse. Then, they took the qi refinement disciples of the Liu family away and replaced the spirit wine and other things on the table. "Come, fellow Daoist Huang, let me offer you a toast." Shang Qinghe sat down and waved his hand naturally. The jade cup flew up and he said with a smile. The two early-stage Foundation Establishment city guards stood behind Shang Qinghe with their hands behind their backs. "Fellow Daoist Shang, do you have anything else to say after drinking this wine?" Huang Tianle looked at the wine cup in front of him and said with a fake smile, "Of course. How can I not say anything when I am here?" Shang Qinghe didn't care and said with a smile, "In that case, fellow Daoist Shang, please wait. I haven't finished my third toast yet." Huang Tianle said. "Is that so?" Shang Qinghe released his divine sense and quickly scanned everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. He didn't even let Xiao Hua go. However, since Xiao Hua was sitting far away and was an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, and the cultivators around him were all 10th stage Qi refinement disciples except for Xue Xue, why would Shang Qinghe take him seriously? -8. Chapter 1931. I haven't finished my toast yet. Who dares to disturb my mood? Shang Qinghe said coldly. Huang Tianle's wine cup was raised in his hand awkwardly. He sighed and drank it in one gulp. "I'll drink this cup myself. However, what I said earlier still stands." "Ha ha ha." Shang Qinghe laughed and said, "I'm late. I wonder what fellow Daoist Huang is talking about. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with fellow Daoist Shang at all." Huang Tianle put down the wine cup and asked again, "Fellow Daoist Shang seems to have not answered my question yet." "Hey, what question? Is it more important than my toast?" Shang Qinghe asked curiously. Huang Tianle was not annoyed. He only chuckled and said, "I'm just asking fellow Daoist Shang. Are you here to represent Haoming City? Or are you here on your own? What's the difference?" Shang Qinghe stopped drinking the wine and placed it on the table. He smiled and said, "Haven't I already answered this question?" "Of course there's a difference." Huang Tianle said unrelentingly, "Please answer, fellow Daoist Shang. So what if I am? So what if I'm not?" Shang Qinghe still did not answer. "If you're here to represent Haoming City, then please get up. Don't sit down. My answer is the same as before. I will definitely not agree to Haoming City's conditions." Huang Tianle said calmly, "If fellow Daoist Shang is not here to represent Haoming City, then sit down and listen to my arrangements like the other fellow Taoist." Ha ha. Shang Qinghe did not get up or answer. He only raised his wine cup and tasted it carefully. All right. Huang Tianle clapped and said, since fellow Daoist Shang is not getting up, it means that fellow Daoist Shang is not here to represent Haoming City. I'm relieved. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Shang Qinghe, who was sitting steadily behind the table, and the two city guards who looked like clay sculptures, with interest. Fellow Taoists. Huang Tianle raised his voice and was about to speak when he heard Shang Qinghe clapping his hands and said, fellow Daoist Huang, I have something to say. Oh, fellow Shang, please go ahead. Huang Tianle was slightly taken aback, but he still replied with a smile. I heard that fellow Daoist Huang's granddaughter had some problems with her cultivation, and she still hasn't recovered after more than a year. That's why I'm here to see if I can help fellow Daoist Huang, Shang Qinghe said with a smile. Haha, thank you for your kind intentions, fellow Shang. There are many fellow Taoists in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall who are as eager as fellow Shang. Fellow Shang, please wait for a moment, Huang Tianle quickly smiled apologetically. Really? These little aura refinement brats? Shang Qinghe's gaze shifted as he sneered, if they can contribute, why would they need us foundation establishment cultivators? Furthermore, from what I've seen, all the fellow Taoists in the early stage of foundation establishment are present. I'm afraid none of them will be of any use. What do you mean, fellow Daoist Shang? Huang Tianle frowned and asked. If I don't take a look first, who would dare to look? Shang Qinghe's voice wasn't loud, but it shook the ears of every cultivator. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Huang Tianle stared at Shang Qinghe. Shang Qinghe calmly pointed his finger, and the wine in the jade pot poured into his mouth like a thin thread. He didn't take Huang Tianle's gaze seriously at all. Haha, since fellow Daoist Shang values Tianmen Mountain's reputation so much, fellow Daoist Huang, let fellow Daoist Shang be the first to treat. We're just thinking the same as fellow Daoist Shang. As long as fellow Daoist Shang can cure the illness, we're more than happy to be treated here by fellow Daoist Huang. Su Mingyu from the Lumen sect quickly said with a smile when he saw the strange scene. That's right, that's right. Several cultivators from other cultivation sects also echoed. Their cultivation was not as good as Shang Qinghe's, but they were not afraid of Shang Qinghe because of their sects. However, when they saw Shang Qinghe kill the chicken to scare the monkey as soon as he entered the door, they were also surprised. Seeing that Shang Qinghe actually wanted to be the first to treat Huang Mengxiang's illness, their hearts skipped a beat. They felt that Huang Mengxiang's illness was not as simple as they thought. In that case, who would be willing to take the lead? Haha fine Huang Tianle said with a smile, since fellow Daoist Shang thinks so highly of me, what's wrong with letting fellow Daoist Shang be the first to treat? Fellow Daoist Huang, why didn't you say so earlier? Shang Qinghe stood up and clapped his hands. However, I'm a cultivator in the middle stage of foundation establishment. The price for letting me do it is not small. Huang Tianle's expression changed slightly, but then he forced a smile and said, why? Before fellow Daoist Shang came to my Tianmen Mountain, didn't you know about the reward offered by my Tianmen Mountain? Haha, is the life of your female cultivator more important? Or is the magic weapon more important? Huang Tianle said with a smile, since fellow Daoist Huang loves your granddaughter and can take out a precious magic weapon, then you must be able to take out other things as well. Huang Tianle flicked his sleeves and said, my Tianmen Mountain's Huang family has declined to this extent. If we can still take out other things, will the cultivators sitting here tolerate fellow Daoist Shang's wanton humiliation? Fellow Daoist Shang, don't say any more. I will definitely not agree to the conditions offered by your Haoming City. Fellow Daoist Huang, don't be anxious. Su Mingyu advised, fellow Daoist Shang has already said that he doesn't represent Haoming City. Let's see what his conditions are like. If it's possible and Mengxiang can be cured, why wouldn't fellow Daoist Huang do it? Huang Tianle did not seem to care about Su Mingyu's face. He snorted coldly and looked at the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Haha, well said, fellow Daoist Su. Shang Qinghe narrowed his eyes and said, what magic weapon did you take out? It's just to send these chi refinement brats away. How can I take a fancy to it? If I take action, I hope fellow Daoist Huang will take out your sect's vermilion bird ring. What? Vermilion bird ring? Huang Tianle looked down from the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall in surprise and looked at Shang Qinghe with amusement. Fellow Daoist Shang's appetite is not ordinary. Although you didn't directly ask my Huang family to give up Tianmen Mountain like last time, you immediately set your eyes on my Huang family's ancestral magic weapon. Hehe, this is really beyond my expectations. Hehe, there are still many things beyond fellow Daoist Huang's expectations. Fellow Daoist Huang, don't be anxious. Take your time and watch. Shang Qinghe sneered and said, if fellow Daoist Huang doesn't want Huang Mengxiang to die young, take out the vermilion bird ring. I guarantee that I will wake her up. Damn it, it's really this guy surnamed Shang's doing. At this point, even Xiao Hua, who had just arrived at Tianmen Mountain, understood what was going on. Fellow Daoist Shang. However, Huang Tianle still shook his head and said, it's not that I don't want to promise you. Fellow Daoist, don't you know? My Huang family's vermilion bird ring has long been lost. Where do you want me to take it back? Ha 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 tilde lost. That's your Huang family's ancestral magic weapon. How could it be lost just like that? Shang Qinghe sneered and said, I received accurate information that the vermilion bird ring is in your Huang family's possession. If fellow Daoist Huang has the heart, why don't you make a blood oath and take a look? -8. Chapter 1932. Blood Oath. Huang Tianle laughed from extreme anger. If I were to make a blood oath here, how would I have the face to see fellow cultivators in the future? Since you don't dare to make a blood oath, then the vermilion bird ring will belong to your Huang clan. Shang Qinghe said slowly. Fellow Daoist Shang tilde Huang Tianle waved his sleeve. Xiong is my granddaughter, whether I treat her or not is my business. Fellow Daoist Shang's conditions are too harsh, I can't agree, please do as you please. Ha 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 tilde Shang Qinghe laughed. I'm already here. You want me to leave just because you say so? How could it be so simple? What do you want? Huang Tianle pulled his face and asked coldly. If you want me to treat her, I'll treat her. If you don't want me to treat her, I'll treat her. Shang Qinghe took a few steps forward and said, you just need to prepare the vermilion bird ring. Ha 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 tilde fellow Daoist Shang, you're not here to treat her, right? You're here to take my life, right? Huang Tianle laughed. That's right. It's not just yours. The lives of dozens of cultivator sects and families in the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall are in your hands. Even if you leave them alive, they won't. Tell me, can your Skygate Mountain still exist in the Dawn Rain continent? Shang Qinghe sneered. You. Huang Tianle was so angry that his body trembled again. He pointed his finger at Shang Qinghe and didn't know what to say. Many people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were shocked. Most of them stood up and looked at Shang Qinghe in horror. The Qiong siblings' faces were also ashen. They stood up while trembling. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue sat steadily. Fellow Taoists, Huang Tianle waved his sleeve and laughed. You are my Skygate Mountain's honored guests. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll guarantee your safety. Don't panic. Qiong Lihao and the others saw Xiao Hua's calmness at this moment. Then, they thought of everything that happened in the Cold River House and quickly sat down. However, they got closer to Xiao Hua. Hehe, I'd like to see how you'll protect their lives. Shang Qinghe clapped his hand and a 3-foot-long saber appeared in his hand. However, this saber was emitting a faint golden brilliance. Don't force me, fellow Daoist Shang, Huang Tianle said through gritted teeth. Did I force you? I'm just here to help fellow Daoist Huang, Shang Qinghe said innocently. Ha 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 tilde Huang Tianle clapped his hands, and a small, lifelike vermilion bird statue appeared. He activated his mana, and the statue emitted a vermilion glow. In an instant, the glow was blinding. Go. Hearing Huang Tianle's soft reprimand, the vermilion bird within the brilliance began to flap its wings. Dozens of rays of brilliance flew out from the center and shot towards the four walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Bang! A burst of fire sounded. From the four walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, clusters of flames appeared. Those flames quickly spread upwards along the walls that were engraved with runes. When they reached the top of the palace hall, all of the flames began to revolve around the top of the palace hall. The runes on the walls moved upwards layer by layer, and the vermilion bird formed by the runes seemed to be shaking its feathers. Following the emergence of the flames, the windows and doors of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall that were previously exposed were now sealed. The entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall became a cluster of flames. Squeak! Although it wasn't as clear as Xiao Hua's phoenix celestial body, it was still soul-shaking. A vermilion bird formed by flames flew out from the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. An incomparably huge aura comparable to that of a nascent soul realm cultivator was emitted from the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. However, the face of the vermilion bird formed by flames wasn't clear. Even its eyes were closed. Fellow Daoist Shang, you forced me to do this. Huang Tianle's face was deathly pale, and his body was trembling slightly. Shang Qinghe didn't seem to care about the formation of the vermilion bird at all. He seemed to have a card up his sleeve as he sneered, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain has always been struggling on the verge of death. Is it all because of the vermilion bird flame array of Tianmen Mountain? It's a pity that this formation, which is said to be able to kill even a nascent soul stage cultivator, has shocked the entire Dawn Rain continent. However, I know that this formation has long lost its effectiveness. What the Huang family's master can activate is merely a facade that lives up to its name. Hey! Is that so? Hearing Shang Qinghe's words, all of the cultivators under the vermilion bird's aura were aghast. Shang Qinghe was right. Even the city lord of Haoming City only came to negotiate terms. If the terms couldn't be reached, he would leave. He didn't want to be entangled with Tianmen Mountain at all. This vermilion bird flame array was a big key, and Shang Qinghe was actually inside it. He was so relaxed that he didn't care about it at all. You! How did you know? Huang Tianle's face became even paler. His eyes flashed with determination as he asked coldly. Ha ha ha, you don't need to know how I know. Shang Qinghe laughed loudly. Since I dared to enter the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall and am not afraid of being sealed, I naturally have my own confidence. So, fellow Daoist Shang doesn't plan to retreat. Huang Tianle said again, if fellow Daoist Shang retreats now, I'll pretend that this never happened at all. As long as fellow Daoist Huang takes out the Vermilion Bird Ring, I'll immediately turn around. Shang Qinghe still didn't give in. Okay, then I'll let you have a taste of Tianmen Mountain's Vermilion Bird Great Array that has lost its effectiveness. Huang Tianle spat a mouthful of blood essence onto the Vermilion Bird statue in his hand. It shook with difficulty. The vermilion bird in the ball of light flapped its wings. The 100-foot-tall vermilion bird flame also flapped its wings and rushed toward Shang Qinghe. The swaying flame rushed toward Shang Qinghe's face with its monstrous aura, suppressing Shang Qinghe's power. However, Shang Qinghe patted his forehead and released the power of a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator. He was actually able to barely resist it. Under the activation of his magic power, not only did the protective yellow talisman and other things shine, but a long faint shadow also appeared on the golden saber in his hand. The vermilion bird flame flew past Huang Tianle's head and was about to rush towards Shang Qinghe. However, Huang Tianle let out a long roar and his entire body suddenly shook. A vermilion bird Dharma body that was 3 feet in size rushed out from his body. Ah? Vermilion bird Dharma body? Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment, and the cultivator families with sharp eyes all cried out in astonishment. The 3-foot-tall vermilion bird Dharma body rushed into the vermilion bird flame that was flying down from above. As the vermilion bird Dharma body submerged into it, the vermilion bird flame instantly shrank to about 10 feet. Its previously unclear face suddenly appeared, and a pair of cold eyes also suddenly appeared. These eyes were staring at Shang Qinghe. Ouch! When Shang Qinghe saw that the vermilion bird's eyes seemed to be able to see through him, he couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, A string of phantoms flew out from the golden saber magic weapon and slashed into the air. At the same time, Shang Qinghe cast several spells on himself, seemingly to strengthen his defense. Unfortunately, before the phantoms of the golden saber magic weapon could fly in front of the vermilion bird, they were fanned away by the vermilion bird's wings without a trace. Ignorant man, you misled me. Shang Qinghe was awakened by the terrifying vermilion bird flame in front of him. He shouted loudly and wanted to fly away. Moreover, he seemed to want to take out a magic weapon from his storage bag. However, the vermilion bird flew extremely fast. Shang Qinghe only flew half a foot, and the brilliance in his hand had not yet appeared. The vermilion bird passed through him and rushed to the two city guards in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm behind him without stopping at all. Boom 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 boom, red flames suddenly appeared on Shang Qinghe and the two city guards behind him. In an instant, the three people's bodies were ignited. Without waiting for the three people to do anything, and without hearing the three people's screams, their bodies were turned into ashes. Then, the exposed bones in the fire were also burned one by one, turning into ashes that fell to the ground. Squeak! There was another vermilion bird cry. The entire vermilion bird flame flew to the top of the vermilion bird palace hall and disappeared, but Huang Tianle's vermilion bird dharma body didn't come out. Of course, only Xiao Hua could see the vermilion bird flame fly to the top of the palace hall. The eyes of the others fell on the three flames that instantly killed the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. This is a cultivator in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Su Mingyu murmured, there are still two city guards in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. They didn't have the power to fight back at all. Seeing the flames gradually dissipating, everyone's hearts were still beating fast. It seemed that they hadn't recovered from the shock just now. Cough cough tilde. Huang Tianle seemed to have aged a lot. He actually coughed twice and covered his mouth. He slowly walked to the side of the table and slowly sat down. When he raised the wine jug and poured himself a cup, he leisurely drank it. Only then did a faint blush appear on his face. Fellow Daoist Huang. Xie Yusha of Jingqi Peak sighed with emotion. The vermilion bird flame array is indeed worthy of its reputation. It is said that it can kill a nascent soul realm cultivator. It is indeed possible. Alas, the captain of the city guards of Haoming City died here. I'm afraid it will be difficult for fellow Daoist Huang to explain. Chang Sai of the Jiang Yupai said worriedly. Haha, didn't fellow Daoist Huang ask clearly earlier? Did you come here on behalf of Haoming City, or did you come here on your own? Su Mingyu smiled and said, since you came here on your own, don't blame others for your lack of skills. Besides, if you want to blame fellow Daoist Huang, you have to see if the vermilion bird flame array of Tianmen Mountain is willing. Thank you for your concern, fellow Taoist. Huang Tianle smiled and said, this bastard has evil intentions towards my Tianmen Mountain. As soon as he came, he killed our distinguished guest of Tianmen Mountain and forced me to take out my long-lost ancestral treasure. I killed him. Firstly, I can give an explanation to the Liu family of Chanxi. Secondly, I can also help Haoming City clean up the city. I think Daoist Yang Hong will also understand this matter. Everyone suddenly understood. No wonder Huang Tianle let Shang Qinghe kill Liu Fan so easily just now. It turned out that Huang Tianle already had the intention to kill him. However, they never thought that Huang Tianle, who was in the early stage of Foundation establishment, could kill Shang Qinghe, who was in the middle stage of Foundation establishment, and two city guards who were in the early stage of Foundation establishment. This vermilion bird flame array was really terrifying. -8. Chapter 1933. Therefore, everyone unconsciously looked at the flames around the vermilion bird palace. Fellow cultivators Huang Tianle seemed to understand everyone's thoughts and smiled apologetically. I just activated the vermilion bird formation and consumed a lot of spiritual power. I can't open the formation at this time. Don't be afraid, you are my distinguished guests. After I recover my spiritual power, I will open the formation immediately. Ha ha ha. Tilda Su Mingzong laughed and said, "Fellow cultivator Huang, you are really treating us as outsiders. We have been staying in the Tianmen mountain for more than 10 days. What evil intentions do you have? With the protection of this formation, we are safe, not to mention an evil guest like Shang Qinghe." Ha ha ha, that's right. All the cultivators laughed and felt relieved. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiao Hua frowned slightly and thought to himself, in order to kill Shang Qinghe, Huang Tianle threw the vermilion bird celestial body into the vermilion bird flame formation. Looking at his weak appearance now, I'm afraid it's not just a simple consumption of spiritual power. If there is no accident, Huang Tianle's life is in danger. Moreover, what does Shang Qinghe mean by an ordinary man misleads me? However, since the last sentence was heard by everyone, such as Su Mingzong and the others, Xiao Hua didn't want to be nosy. Ha ha, fellow cultivators, please drink this third cup of wine. I hope that good things are hard to come by. Today, we can find the cause of Xiong Er's illness. Huang Tianle waved his hand and let the disciples standing in the palace fill his wine cup. Good. Everyone finally finished the third cup of wine and quietly waited for Huang Tianle's arrangement. Huang Tianle drank the spirit wine in the wine cup in his hand, then he clapped his hand. With a pa-pa sound, the disciple who was standing behind him took a few steps back and walked to a decoration on the left side of the hall. He took out a token and pasted it on it. With the activation of spiritual power, the decoration emitted a faint red brilliance. The brilliance spread out for about 10 meters in front of him, and then there was a fluctuation of spiritual power in the space. It gradually faded like paint, revealing a crimson jade bed. On the jade bed, a young woman was sleeping soundly, and beside the woman was a middle-aged woman in tears. Another male cultivator who looked very similar to Huang Tianle was standing beside the jade bed with a sad face. Xiao Hua and the others' expressions changed when they saw the two cultivators around the 12th layer of qi refining appear. They'd all used their divine senses to scan the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, but none of them had discovered that there was actually still a restriction in that place. Furthermore, there were still people behind the restriction. Seeing the restriction open, the female cultivator wiped her tears and stood up from the bed, revealing her charming face. "I, Huang Liang, and I, Yang Yu, greet fellow Taoist." The male and female cultivators bowed to the other cultivators and said, "We thank everyone for coming from afar for the matter of my daughter." Oh, so it's Huang Tianle's son and daughter-in-law. Everyone suddenly understood. No wonder they hadn't seen Huang Tianle's son. It turned out they were all hiding here. However, seeing that Huang Liang and Yang Yu were only at the peak of qi refining, everyone understood even more. We don't dare. Thinking that Huang Liang might be the head of Tianmen Mountain's Huang clan in the future, no one dared to be negligent. Most of them cupped their hands and returned the greeting. "Liang how is Xiong Er's condition?" Huang Tianle asked. "I'll let father know. There's no change," Huang Liang whispered. "Good." Huang Tianle turned to the crowd and said, "My family's Xiong Er is here. I'm sure everyone can see it with their divine sense. Of course, everyone can come to the front and treat him carefully. However, everyone only has one chance, and the time is only the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. I hope everyone can understand." Then, with a wave of his hand, a crimson magic tool appeared in his hand. He said sorrowfully, "This is Tianmen Mountain's magic tool, Sparrow Drink. If any fellow Daoist can wake Xiong Er up, this magic tool will belong to that fellow Daoist." Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, and he saw that in Huang Tianle's hand was a magic tool that looked like an inkstone. A faint crimson radiance flowed within it. It was obviously an exceptional fire-type magic tool. He then looked at the surrounding aura refining cultivators, and their eyes all revealed greedy gazes. "Fellow Daoist Huang," Su Mingyu said softly, "from what Shang Qinghe said just now, it seems, it has something to do with Xiong Er's coma. Fellow Daoist Huang was too careless just now. If it's a trick by that bastard, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to solve it." Huang Tianle waved his hand and the magic tool, Sparrow Drink, was placed on the table. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that I'm careless, but that bastard is too overbearing. If I only use this Sparrow Drink to counteract, How could I be so ruthless? That bastard not only covets my Tianmen Mountain's ancestral magic tool, but also wants to use everyone's lives to threaten us. It's not that I haven't thought of compromising and using this to exchange for Xiong'er's life, but, is it that simple? Forget it. Su Mingyu sighed and said, it's useless to say more now. I'll be the first to take a look. I hope I can see something. Fellow Daoist Su, please. Huang Tianle stood up and accompanied Su Mingyu to the crimson jade bed. Huang Mengxiang's jade-like cheeks were extremely beautiful, and her thin and long eyebrows were enchanting. Although her eyes were slightly closed and her real expression could not be seen, her long eyelashes were trembling slightly as if she was having a wonderful dream. It was really pitiful. Su Mingyu had already checked with his divine sense and found nothing unusual. He walked to the window, cupped his hands and said to Huang Liang, fellow Daoist Huang, I'm sorry to offend you. Senior Su, please. Huang Liang bowed in return. Su Mingyu stretched out his hand and placed a finger between Huang Mengxiang's eyebrows, transferring a wisp of true energy. However, after nearly half a cup of tea's time, Su Mingyu frowned and opened his eyes. A trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. He withdrew his hand and said with a wry smile, fellow Daoist Huang, I've embarrassed myself. This girl clearly looks like she's asleep. There's nothing unusual at all. Senior Su, you're right. That's the problem. Yang Yu smiled apologetically and said, Xiong'er has been in the 9th layer of qi refining for a long time. How could she sleep so much? Even if she's really asleep, why can't she be woken up? She's been sleeping for more than a year. Her cultivation hasn't improved but has regressed. Alas, forgive me for being powerless. Su Mingyu sighed. Although I've prepared some methods, it doesn't seem to be effective. Let's look at the other fellow Taoist. Haha, it's fine. Fellow Daoist Su, please take a seat. Huang Tianle smiled apologetically. When Su Mingyu returned to his seat, a few cultivators came over and asked in low voices. Su Mingyu answered them in full detail. Then, Jing Qifeng's Xie Yu came forward and took out a diamond-shaped jade pendant from his storage bag. He said with a smile, this is my Jing Qifeng's magic tool, Rain Dew. It's used to clear the heart and purify the spirit. I specially brought it here. I hope it'll be useful. -8. Chapter 1934. Okay, Senior Xie, please help. Huang Liang looked at it and nodded in agreement. Xie Yujiang did not hesitate. He waved his hand and the raindrops flew on Huang Mengxiang's forehead. Then, Xie Yujiang cast a few spells on the raindrops. The raindrops emitted a light blue brilliance and turned into a palm-sized cloud. Then, like raindrops, a light blue liquid dripped from the cloud and fell on Huang Mengxiang's forehead. When the liquid fell on Huang Mengxiang's forehead, it immediately seeped into it and disappeared. However, after waiting for half a cup of tea's time, Huang Mengxiang still did not move. During this time, he only frowned slightly and licked his lips with his light red tongue. Alas! Xie Yujiang put away the raindrops and shook his head. It seems that it still can't treat the illness. I can't do anything. Thank you, fellow Daoist. Huang Tianle's expression did not change. He raised his hand and asked Xie Yujiang to return to his seat. Then, more than a dozen cultivators in the early stage of foundation establishment used either magic tools or spells. There was even a cultivator who took out a smelly pill and wanted Huang Mengxiang to take it. Huang Tianle naturally refused. After the cultivator took a little of it, Huang Tianle took the pill and put it into Huang Mengxiang's mouth. Unfortunately, these cultivators could not wake Huang Mengxiang up. When it was Xiao Hua's turn, Xiao Hua simply didn't stand up, and only waved his hand. That Huang Tianle also faintly nodded, and indicated for the next cultivator to come up. 4 hours quickly passed. Not only had all the foundation establishment cultivators seen it, even 90% of the other qi condensation disciples had seen it. Only a few cultivators sitting near the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall had yet to stand up. At this time, a strong young cultivator stood up and walked to Huang Tianle. He bowed and said, Junior Zheng Zeihao from Meng Country's Dengming Mountain greets Senior Huang. Oh! A disciple of Meng Country's Dengming Mountain? Huang Tianle was obviously stunned. Looking at Zheng Zeihao's jade-like face and bright eyes, he smiled and said, I didn't expect the matter of my Tianmen Mountain to spread to Meng Country. I'll let Senior Huang know that this junior has come to the country of Shi to gain experience. Coincidentally, this junior has come to broaden my horizons. Zheng Zeihao replied politely, naturally, I hope that I can help Senior Huang to wake Miss Mengxiang from her coma. All right, go take a look. Huang Tianle nodded. This Huang's bounty didn't say that it was limited to the country of Shi. If you can save Xiong I can give you the sparrow drink. Thank you for your generosity, Senior Huang. Zheng Zeihao came before the jade bed and bowed respectfully to Huang Liang and Yang Yu. Only then did he reach into his bosom and pull out a small spirit storage bag. Hey! This little cultivator actually has a spirit storage pouch? Xiao Hua was very sensitive to this kind of thing and immediately recognized it. The other Foundation establishment cultivators soon recognized him as well. Their faces were either filled with realization or regret. In any case, there were many different expressions. Zheng Zeihao opened the spirit storage bag and muttered something. Then, he pointed his finger and a hornet-like spirit insect flew out from the bag. As soon as the spirit insect flew out, it made a soft buzzing sound and circled Zheng Zeihao twice before floating in front of him. Senior Huang, this is a spirit insect, hummingbird. This junior has raised it to check on Miss Mengxiang's condition. Zheng Zeihao was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he asked respectfully, Hummingbird? Before Huang Tianle could speak, Xiao Hua was stunned. He immediately thought of the records in the insect scripture. Of course, he was just casually looking at it. Now that he saw a real spirit insect, he naturally thought of the records. Hummingbird, sensitive to all kinds of spiritual energy and spiritual objects. It has no attack power and is ranked 22nd. This spirit insect itself has no value. It's just that it can sense all kinds of spiritual energy. That's why it's ranked so high. Xiao Hua thought, this Zheng Zeihao can raise this thing. It might be unexpected. Huang Tianle seemed to have heard of the hummingbird's name. He looked at it and nodded slightly. Thank you, Senior Huang. Zheng Zeihao smiled slightly, revealing his white jade-like teeth. He looked very graceful. Zheng Zeihao muttered the incantation again. After a moment, he pointed his finger. The hummingbird circled in the air for a while and then flew down. It actually drilled into Huang Mengxiang's straight nose. Zheng Zeihao immediately sat down with his eyes closed and his palms facing the sky. His hands formed an unknown seal. Zheng Zeihao's expression was indifferent at first, then a little stunned, then a little surprised, then a little sleepy. In the end, his brows wrinkled tightly and then relaxed again. He seemed to have a card up his sleeve. Huang Tianle's heart seemed to change along with Zheng Zeihao's expression from time to time. When Zheng Zeihao opened his eyes, he immediately said, Honorable Nephew Zheng. Zheng Zeihao was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he faintly smiled and pointed his finger at Huang Mengxiang. Then, as if there was a heavy object hanging from his fingertips, he slowly lifted it up. The hummingbird slowly crawled out of Huang Mengxiang's nose. The hummingbird appeared to be very tired. It barely flew half a foot in the air before suddenly falling down. However, Zheng Zeihao extended his hand and caught it. He immediately put it away in his spirit storage pouch. Honorable Nephew Zheng, you've worked hard. Huang Tianle knew that Zheng Zeihao had exhausted his mind. He unconsciously felt warm in his heart and smiled. How is the situation? It's all right. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Zheng Zeihao's voice carried a trace of exhaustion as he spoke in a slightly hoarse voice. Ah! Not only was Huang Tianle shocked, all of the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were greatly shocked. They didn't think that Huang Mengxiang's condition would be diagnosed by a little cultivator at the 8th level of qi refining. It was truly inconceivable. Honorable Nephew Zheng, please speak. Huang Tianle said happily. I'll let Senior Huang know that Miss Mengxiang was implanted with a dream mirage butterfly. Zheng Zeihao seemed to want to shock people to death and said without hesitation. What? Dream mirage butterfly? How is this possible? Huang Tianle shook his head. Although this old man doesn't know anything about spiritual insects, I still know a little about them. This dream mirage butterfly has long been extinct in my Xiaoyu continent. How could it appear in my Tianmen mountain? Besides, in ancient times, the dream mirage butterfly was good at creating illusions. It was usually used in the eye of an illusion array. How could it be implanted in Xiong-er's body? That's right. Su Mingyu also smiled. Although Meng Xiong is unconscious, it is completely different from the dream mirage butterfly's dream. If the ancient dream mirage butterfly appeared in Tianmen Mountain, I'm afraid the entire Tianmen Mountain would become an illusion and we would all be people in the illusion. Hehe, what the seniors said is reasonable. Zhang Zeihao was not in a hurry and said, just now, this junior was also surprised. This junior didn't expect to encounter this ancient spiritual insect. However, this ancient spiritual insect seems to be a larva, just an egg. Therefore, it can only create a dream in Miss Meng Xiong's body and can't affect others. This junior used the wasp gang to perceive the power of the dream and quickly escaped. Because of this junior also suffered a little injury. Dream mirage butterfly? Larva? Xiao Hua frowned slightly. The insect scripture didn't say that the dream mirage butterfly was extinct, but it was listed as the first spiritual insect. But listening to Zheng Zeihao's words, it was reasonable and didn't seem to be hiding anything. Then, how can fellow Zheng wake up Xiong-er? Huang Liang was overjoyed. He didn't care about the dream mirage butterfly, he just wanted to know how to wake up his daughter. This. Zheng Zeihao was a little embarrassed and hesitated, but he didn't answer. Nephew Zheng, if you have any difficulties, just say it. Huang Tianle frowned and said, as long as this Huang can bear it, I will definitely do it. Zheng Zeihao sighed and said, this junior doesn't know how to transmit sound, so I will say it now. Just say it. Huang Tianle looked around and said calmly. This junior is able to take out the eggs of the dream mirage butterfly, but this method is passed down from ancient times and has long been incomplete. This junior, because this method is too harmful to the harmony of the heavens, this junior has never used it. Nephew Zheng, is it because you are not sure? Huang Tianle asked. I am sure, Zheng Zeihao said awkwardly. The method is to interfere with Miss Meng Xiong's primordial yin Ua. Huang Tianle was dumbfounded. Of course, Senior Huang, this method is passed down from ancient times and will not affect Miss Meng Xiong's foundation establishment. Zheng Zeihao quickly explained with a red face. But even if he explained, how could Huang Tianle's brows loosen? How could everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall not be stunned? Primordial yin, how could it be interfered with at will? A female cultivator's primordial yin could only be picked by her dual cultivation partner, others could not touch it. Of course, the primordial yin of a female cultivator of the Immortal Beauty sect was originally for sale and could not be generalized. But since Huang Mengxiang's primordial yin could not be touched at will, she could only sleep sweetly in the dream created by the dream mirage butterfly's larva until she finally died of old age. But if Huang Mengxiang's primordial yin was touched, she could only dual cultivate with that person, otherwise she could only guard it for the rest of her life. This junior has nothing else to say. If Senior Huang is willing, this junior will first report to the sect. This matter is really beyond this junior's expectations, so I ask Senior Huang to reconsider. Zheng Zeihao's face was red as he cupped his hands to Huang Tianle, Huang Mang, and Yang Yu, then silently walked back to his seat. Jin Yu what do you think? Huang Tianle had no choice. After all, he was only a grandfather. If this matter really concerned Huang Mengxiang's life, he could only ask Huang Mengxiang's parents. When Yang Yu and Huang Mang heard Zheng Zeihao's words, they had been communicating with each other for a long time. The two of them seemed to be somewhat willing, but also somewhat unwilling. After all, Zheng Zeihao looked good, and Wind God Ruyu was worthy of Huang Mengxiang. But on the other hand, Skygate Mountain did not know much about the Zheng family of Ascending Light Mountain, and Zheng Zeihao was only at Qi Refinement Stage 8, which could not be compared to Huang Mengxiang who was at the peak of Qi Refinement Stage 9. Hearing Huang Tianle's question, Huang Mang communicated with Yang Yu for a while, then smiled bitterly and said, "Father, since it's the dream mirage butterfly, unless it's an ancient secret technique, even if the spirit husbandry sect's disciples came personally, they would not be able to get rid of it. Furthermore, we can't try this method. If Heavenly Gate Mountain has made up our mind and the Zheng family is willing, we have no choice but to be cautious." 8. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.